What's going on, everybody? How's everyone doing? I haven't really gone live in a minute, so this is going to be fun. We're here with a special guest tonight who we're going to get into in just a second. But tonight we're talking all things indie. Indiana Jones and the Deathray of Misfits, I think is what we titled the show. I'm so bad at
That's right.
naming shit.
I think it's great. I love it.
But yeah, guys, we're here with David Deathray. I know you guys have seen him around in the chats. If you should be watching his channel as well, which we are streaming live on David's channel also right now. So that's great. Good to see you guys here. But how are you doing, man? It's your first time on the show.
I'm doing great. Yeah, it's been an exciting week and month, and just getting both of us are celebrating our birthdays next Saturday, so
Yes.
getting ready for a big day there, and then also just trying to pump up the content on the channel and come up with new ideas, and just trying to find a way to balance it with
That's it.
everything else going
Yeah.
on in life for sure. Yeah,
It
how about you,
definitely
man?
it can definitely be challenging. I'm doing good. I'm excited because Indiana Jones. I know this is a franchise that's very near and dear to your heart. I'm a casual fan of Indiana Jones. Like I love the original trilogy. I enjoy watching them every time I do. But I haven't gone back and gone through them in a while. So this was fun to sit and rewatch. Well, most of it was.
Yeah.
So yeah, what does this franchise kind of mean for you?
Well, I was born in 82, so I really remember, watching like Temple of Doom on VHS or probably
Mm-hmm.
Betamax when it came out originally. We had Beta before
Wow,
we
it's a
made that switch
throwback.
to
Yeah.
VHS. Yeah, I'm old as shit. But yeah, it's one of those things where, it's kind of like I probably was exposed to this even before being exposed to Star Wars. So, a
Okay.
franchise that I grew up watching. It was one of those, like, along with Star Wars, that my parents bought the trilogy when it came out on VHS. So we had like the really cool box. I wonder if they
Mm-hmm.
still have it. That thing is probably belongs in a museum at this
It
point.
belongs in a museum.
But it was one of those where, as a kid, like I think Last Crusade was easily my favorite as a kid, and I would
Mm,
go back and watch the others, but I probably wore that tape out. So yeah, just really fun, easily digestible, entertaining action movies that you could just sort of enjoy in a classic sort of way.
yeah,
Very a great mix of Lucas's style and Spielberg's style. So a
yeah.
really good combo of them coming together. Absolutely.
Yep, absolutely. Brandon says you're a casual indie fan. This is my top six favorite action. Now, for those of you who saw our top 10 greatest movie trilogies, I did put it in the top 10. I do think it is one of the greatest movie trilogies of all time. But yeah, I'm
Mhm.
just a casual fan. Like I like them, I enjoy them, but it's not one of my favorite franchises. But so okay. And Tana says Happy Mother's Day. Yes, Happy Mother's Day to everyone out there. I did watch Serial Mom today. That's my Mother's Day tradition, even though I'm not a mother, but that's what I like to watch on Mother's Day. Either that or the Jamie Lee Curtis, Lindsay Lohan Freaky Friday. I love that
Oh
movie.
yeah, that's a
Yeah.
good one. Yeah.
So, yeah, so many of you guys in the chat. I'll try to brief you guys real quick. I already said hi, but he said Kingdom of the Crystal. I guess I'm, oh, just wait.
Yeah.
This is gonna be
It's
fun.
all
But why did
relative. It's all relative, Antonis.
why did it have to be Snake? How you doing? Oh, David Deathray is here. What's going on? Brett, man, from Good Real Hunting. What's up? The first four Indiana Jones movies once a couple years ago, and I still never watched part five. So
Mm.
I did five for the very first time today to prep for this, and this was the only reason I really had no interest in watching five until I knew that we were going to do this show.
Mm.
And you had just watched five for the first time as well, right?
Yeah, just like 3 nights ago, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll
So,
get into that one.
Ashton's here. I got your clip for you, man. Let me find it.
Who are these people?
Love it.
It's so great.
Classic. Classic.
I
Or
know.
those first two Austin Powers movies. I mean, I guess
Yeah.
the third one's okay, but like I think the
I
first
enjoyed the
two are
third
kind of
one.
all
Yeah.
you need. Yeah.
Brandon, does anyone else cry at the end of Dial Destiny? Yeah, probably not for the reasons you're thinking.
Yeah.
um, somebody from the Death Race channel over there. This
Yeah,
is
what's happening, Cheesy Corn Pop? Yeah, saw him pop in on a stream where I was just in on the chat, and then he came on over and checked out the channel. So heck yeah, man, great to see you.
Oh yeah, cheese corn pop. I love that name, and that picture's great too. That's because that's
Yeah,
Dave
that's Dave
McCrae's friend,
McCrae
Vincent
and Vincent.
Bissanti. Yeah.
Yeah, that's some good
Um,
shit.
What's going on, Cody? Dude who loves movies. He'll be on the channel next weekend again. He was on here for a watch along for Mannequin, the underappreciated '80s film
Oh
there,
wow.
and he's coming
God,
on.
Kim Cattrall, dude.
Yeah, I know he's coming on for the birthday special. We're gonna watch the Goonies,
Hell
so
yeah.
that's gonna be fun. Ashton
Awesome.
says I watched Abigail on Mother's Day. I'm probably gonna try to watch that tomorrow. I got Abigail and Ghostbusters: Frozen Empire on digital, and I'm
Oh
gonna try to
nice.
watch them
Yeah.
both. So,
Good
um,
luck.
all
I'm just
right.
joking.
Yeah, I think I remember Temple of Doom being the first indie movie I watched as a small kid. The whole heart thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ryan, what's up? R.I.P. Roger Corman. Yeah, I saw that. That's really sad.
Mhm, mhm.
Brett says crying because I'm happy the Dial of Destiny.
Yeah.
All
There's
right.
potential there. We'll talk about it.
Yeah,
We'll talk
and
about it.
speaking of, to get you guys kind of in the mood, let me wet your whistle with this little 2 minute tribute to one of your guys' favorite franchises of all time.
Indiana Jones. Always knew someday you'd come walking back through my door. I never doubted that.
Professor of archaeology, expert on the occult, and how does one say it? Obtainer of rare antiquities.
Archaeology is the search for facts, not truth. Forget any ideas you got about lost cities, exotic travel, and digging up the world. We do not follow maps to buried treasure, and X never, ever marks the spot.
You and I are very much alike. Archaeology is our religion.
We're about to complete a great quest that began almost 2,000 years ago.
The Ark. It's a radio for speaking to God, and it's within my reach. You want to talk to God? Let's go see him together. I've got nothing better to do.
Want to be a good archaeologist? You gotta get out of the library! You're a teacher? Part-time.
Fortune and glory, kid. Fortune and glory.
I don't believe in magic, but a few times in my life, I've seen things. Things I can't explain. I've come to believe it's not so much what you believe, it's how hard you believe it.
Goosebumps,
All right.
man.
I know.
Did you
right?
put that, you
I
put that together,
wish I
right?
put that together, but no, I found that
Okay.
on YouTube actually. I mean, I
That's
made a few
really
tweaks to it,
good.
so it wasn't exactly the same. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, I did not cut that together. But I know it's great. Okay, so Raiders of the Lost Ark. Let's go ahead and get this started. What is like your earliest memory with this one? What's kind of your overall thoughts on it?
Man, this is probably the one that I watched the least as a kid. I know like it's got classic moments that I remember from childhood, but I don't remember really watching this one a lot until like my, early teen years, kind of, not so much as a little kid. Man, I mean, I think the villain really stands out.
Yeah.
That kind of sweaty look with the Coke bottle, black rim glasses, just a villain with an intense, unique look. Of course, the burning of the, on the hand and everything is memorable as well. But also, I think what stands out to me about Raiders of the Lost Ark, especially on this last viewing, was like, I'm like, man, I know this movie's from '83, but it feels so old. Like the action Like the way they shoot action in movies has really evolved in
It
such
almost kind of feels like a
crazy
spaghetti
way.
western a little
Yeah,
bit.
it feels like something from the 50s or 60s almost.
Yeah.
And not that I think it still has its charm. I don't think it's bad or anything, but it's one of those things where a lot of Harrison doing like Kirk Fu, like holding his fist together and like hitting someone with the elbow, and it throws them back, as if holding your fist together like gives you more power, but also like theatrical and fun. And I think they really, man, they got the formula right out of the gate. Like watching it back, I was like, this movie is like, I can't really complain. As far as story goes and execution, I mean, I don't think there's anything missing here.
I would have to agree with you. There really is something special about this movie. Like you said, it feels older than 1981, but it's just
sorry, 81. I said 83.
Close enough. Whatever. I didn't even catch it, to be honest with you.
Oh, why?
So yeah, you have Harrison Ford there, who is a great lead. We already know that, but you really only your lead is as good as your supporting characters. That's both on the good side and the bad side. You mentioned Paul Freeman a little bit there, as one of the villains, who is great. And we were just talking about him on the last live show when we were talking about Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the movie, when he played Ivan Ooze here. But he's so good in this movie. And then you have Marion there, who is a great companion. And we're going to talk about the comparison with the Jones women and the Bond women, because he kind of does kind of have his own set of Bond girls in everyone. And go ahead.
And it feels like Bond, and I think that was the original conception, is because I watched a little bit of a documentary, and Spielberg and Lucas were talking to each other. Spielberg was like, I really want to do a Bond movie, and George Lucas was like, I can actually do you one better. And he's like, what are you talking about? And he's like, I have an idea about this archaeologist that goes and finds these artifacts, and we set it up. It's basically like Bond, but he's a professor is like his one identity, and then he turns into this other identity where he's like, the suave, like handsome, go-getter. So very, very Bond feeling. I think maybe even more so in like The Last Crusade. They really find that pitch perfect for Bond. But yeah, I do feel that vibe throughout the franchise. And man, Karen Allen is really mesmerizing as a performer. She really sucks me in. She earns every bit of my attention. She's in like one of my favorite Christmas movies of all time, Scrooged. I think she's great in that movie as well.
Bill Murray is so good. If you guys haven't seen it, check it out.
Oh my God, yeah. And I think she's great in every performance she has here. But man, in Raiders of the Lost Ark, that scene where they reunite and you get a great bit of backstory on them. But with a charming kind of back and forth, really awesome chemistry here between those two.
I agree. And like you said, there's history there. Like they haven't seen each other, and I believe it's been 10 years since they last saw each other.
Something
so
like
there's
that,
a whole story with them that we don't even know. So I think that's interesting.
I picked up a lot on, because he talks about how his friend had just passed away, his old professor, and they had a falling out. And I'm like, this is the first time where I was ever like, oh my God, they had a falling out because he's dating his like teenage daughter. I'm guessing she was at the end of high school or something, and Indiana's probably 24 or something like that.
Right.
She's in Animal House.
Animal House. That's right.
Yeah,
I forgot about that.
That's my brother there in the chat. What's happening, Matt?
Oh, what's going on, Matt? Antana says my favorite is Elsa from Last Crusade. Raymond's favorite is Willie. She's so. Oh, we're gonna talk about our favorite like Jones girl as we.
We'll go through them all for sure. Yeah.
But we're talking about supporting characters. John Rhys Davies.
Yeah.
My God, he is so good. Now, obviously, I knew him first as Gimli. Like I had seen Raiders first, but I didn't really know that actor at that time. It wasn't until after I saw Lord of the Rings where I started to recognize him in more roles. And he's so good here as Sala, and he's just a very likable guy. And you're like, I don't care what this guy's doing. Like I'm going with him. I'm riding with him. I think that's a good companion for someone like Indiana Jones to have on his side.
Yeah, I love how Sala is a true family man. He's always got like kids around him, no matter what movie he pops up in. There's always little kids. And I think it's a really good like juxtaposition to Indiana, who hasn't really found that in his life. His life is very exciting in sometimes a fun way, but also like kind of chaotic is sort of like what I pick up on, just because of the adventures he finds himself in. and Salah's kind of like, you know, an anchor that sort of shows him a window into a totally different world, and also, yeah, really helpful guy that is there for him in a pinch. Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, you talk about when you were a kid again and you watched Raiders of the Lost Ark. Like, what was kind of your feelings on that? Just to kind of reiterate for anybody who missed it.
You know, I thought as a kid, I was like, man, Last Crusade just blows every other single one out of the water. You know, it's kind of how I felt as a kid. And I don't remember really appreciating Raiders of the Lost Ark that much. Like, I would watch it and everything. It has classic moments that stand out, obviously. But I felt like from a kid's perspective, it just wasn't as engaging. But certainly got a better appreciation watching it as an adult, for sure.
I find that interesting because I agree. Because when I saw it as a kid for the first time, and this one was the first one I saw, I had it on a blank VHS tape with 1989's Batman and
Oh,
the
wow.
Goonies. So it was Batman, the Goonies, and Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah.
That was a great tape. So
Yeah.
obviously, I love Batman. I love the Goonies. When I got to Raiders of the Lost Ark as a kid, like I couldn't get past the first 5 minutes just because I was like, "This is boring." Like, why?
Yeah.
Why do you think that Raiders isn't really appealing as a kid, but as an adult, you have so much to appreciate about it? Like, why do you think it didn't grab you when you were younger?
You know, it's the first in the series, so they're laying everything out. They're putting the groundwork out there. They also haven't really like found a groove. I think sometimes, like, you know, as a franchise, if a film turns into a franchise, sometimes the first one's the best one because they catch lightning in a bottle, and they don't, like a slasher series, you're more likely to have the first one be the best. But I think in something like this, like an adventure series, it's almost like, as the audience is like, you know him from Raiders of the Lost Ark and Temple of Doom. Like, then we like kind of know what to expect. We're familiar with the formula of the story, and they can kind of move a little bit quicker and throw more things at you. So I think like in this one, maybe there's just a bit of a more chill pace so everyone can kind of grasp what's going on with the story, get to know the characters properly. And also there's just like adult like elements and themes. Like as a kid, you don't know what it's like to have a run-in with an ex that you haven't seen in 10 years, and the first thing they do is punch you right in the face. Like you don't, you know, it's like
Right.
so some things like that aren't even like, they're not adult in like a you know, a graphic way. It's just like adult as far as like it just goes over your head. So I remember the things I remember as a kid is, you know, Indy stealing the idol and running away from the boulder, the burn in the hand, like opening up the ark and having it like, you know, take the souls of everyone who's looking at it. Like those moments really stand out.
Why did it have to be snakes?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, that too. Absolutely. Yeah. And there are some beautiful shots here. There are some, the matte painting work is unbelievable in this film.
Yeah.
So I think those are things like, as I watch more and more movies, I feel like I get smarter as a fan. At least I want to think that I do. And I try to learn more about the process and what makes the magic work. So that way, when I go back and I watch older films, I can kind of look at them in that lens, like not think of them from a 2024 perspective, but like watch it from the, like put myself in that mindset of that year and enjoy it on a whole new level for sure.
Yeah. And another thing is I love the way this movie shot, because when you're in the desert with Indy, like it feels very hot. Like you feel like you are suffering in that heat right alongside them. And that doesn't happen all the time. There's certain movies. Rob Zombie does a very good job with that when doing movies like Devil's Rejects. That's another movie where I can just feel that heat. Texas Chainsaw Massacre is another one. But it's very rare where you can actually like feel the heat or the cold, depending on whatever you're watching. But Raiders of the Lost Ark in particular is one that I feel the heat.
Yeah, you got to put that baby oil on and like flick a little dirt on it, and then it just looks like you're in this state of constant sweat, like it's like humid, and you're, you know, like I'm sure you know what that's like in the summer, where it's like it feels like you step outside and you're immediately glistening. You know, we get that period out here in Arizona as well, where you're just like, oh my god, the air is so damn thick.
Yeah,
he is. Yeah.
Couple great comments here. The melting face. Oh my god. That's
gosh.
so good.
Nightmare fuel as a child.
Nightmare fuel for sure.
Yeah.
Alfred Molina briefly discusses experience having live tarantulas put on him on set when he discussed it. Speaking of fun little behind the scenes fact, John Rhys Davies was on Michael Rosenbaum's podcast called Inside of You, which, side note, great podcast, check it out.
Awesome.
And he was talking about the day that everybody on Raiders of the Lost Ark got food poisoning. and he was like,
Oh
"Oh,
my
I'm
God.
in my bed." It was supposed to be a 3-day shoot. It got cut to 3 hours. Everyone was just like, "We're all sick." The nurse comes in, like the Australian nurse that we had on set. She comes in, she says, "Excuse me, can I use your toilet?" And he says something like only John Rhys Davies can get away with. I knew that God had died. I knew there was no hope that day. Because when the doctor's sick, you're kind of
Yeah,
screwed. So, like, great little fun story right there. I wanted
that's
to share.
hilarious.
But okay. Any other thoughts that you wanted to talk about with Raiders of the Lost Ark?
You know, I don't think we're missing anything as far as yeah, I feel like it's a really good first entry just to kind of get the ball rolling on everything. Some good action scenes. You know, you can kind of see that they were, you know, going to take those things further as they went
Yeah.
along. But man, classic opening. I like, so one thing that I really like about especially the, you know, the first three movies is I feel like there's layers to like the villains and the villainy. You're not
Yes.
just stuck with one bad guy for the whole movie. And so to me, I find that it's a bit engaging. Like Indy doesn't just have to worry about like the Nazis by themselves because there's gosh, the guy's name is totally slipping me. The French guy that is his like kind of
Oh, yeah.
competitor.
Mhm.
He is having, you know, at the very beginning of the movie, that guy takes the idol away, and then we find out that he's in cahoots with the Nazis, but it also, you know, just provides an extra level to where it's not that Indy is just worrying about like one person. It's like there's a whole conglomeration of people that want to find this artifact, and Indy has to be the first one to get it. So I really
Yeah.
appreciate that about this film as well, that it you know, creates those layers. And yeah, just a really charming action movie, you know, easy to watch. And I love how they tie it in with like real religious elements, but create
Yeah.
a fantasy story, you know, within the using those parameters. It's pretty
Yeah, the
creative.
Nazis are the bad guys, you know?
Yeah.
We're taking place in the 1930s, which I think is kind of cool.
Mhm.
Thank you guys.
And
Bellic.
it makes sense.
Belloc.
Like
Belloc.
Belloc,
Belloc.
yeah. And it's, you know, it's properly motivated. It's one of those
Yeah.
things where like they find a creative way of like the Nazis aren't just interested in like collecting all the gold and stuff. They want to collect things that they think have supernatural powers, you
Yeah.
know, that can give them an edge. So it like it's not, you know, it plays on a totally different level.
All right. And we all agree, Marianne. She's lovely. We like that character. I
Oh
think
my
she's
God,
like
I
a
love
good character.
Marion.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think she's one of the like she's easily the most capable out of all of
Yeah.
his ladies,
She can
I
handle
would
her
say.
own. Yeah.
And she is yeah, she's, you know, they use her as a bit of a damsel in distress, like for a little bit there, which I think is just kind of a trope of the genre that somebody needs to be
Yeah.
rescued.
I feel
But
that's inevitable. At some point,
but
you're gonna have that.
yeah, and it all makes sense. Like within the story, it makes sense. So I think
Mhm.
she definitely handles her own, and she's a good, you know, they have a great back and forth. Their chemistry is, you know, fantastic.
Yeah, and not only that, she's smart. When she's sitting there with Belloc, manipulating him as they're kind of having that drink, that's a
Yeah,
great scene. It
yeah.
shows you it's like, no, she can handle herself just fine. Yeah, there we go.
She
The entire
manipulates during the she manipulates during the drinking contest too.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
The entire crew was sick the day they shot the famous Indy with the gun versus the man. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I was talking about. Yep, and there's a reason they keep bringing her back as well.
Yeah.
And then Brandon had a really good question. Which was the better sequence, the plane fight or the truck chase? I'm gonna go the truck chase. I really like that scene.
Yeah, I think the truck chase too, because when I watch the plane fight, like the payoff's really cool. It's a great, like knowing that guy gets chopped up by the propeller.
Oh
But
yeah,
I've seen enough UFC to know that like Indy would have been knocked out like by maybe the second punch by that guy. He's taking massive blows from a dude that's like a foot taller than him and built, you know. So I see those punches and I'm like, I know this is a fantasy movie, but he's taken like 10 of them to the head. Like
Right.
he'd be dead by now. But yeah, the truck chase is just, I think I appreciate it a bit more as far as the you know, the choreography of it all. It's just, you know, so many stunts and a lot of fun.
I would agree. Raymond says the plane fight was so wild. All right, so if we are done with Raiders, that we will move on to Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. This is a fan favorite for a lot of people. Where do you kind of
Yeah.
stand on this?
I would say that I think this is my least favorite out of the original trilogy.
I agree.
And I know it gets a lot of love. I appreciate the darkness of it. I love that the middle chapters of trilogies are usually like the darker ones. I like that it is, totally a break from what we're used to, especially now that there's 5 movies. It's the only one where the Nazis aren't implicated in some way. And so I do think that it's fun that it's a departure in a sense, and that it still includes like a religious aspect, but just a different kind of almost like a made up religion just for the sake of the story. However, I do think that the writing and Willie really take me out of this movie, man. And it's not like, I mean, I know the actress is like doing what she's been given. I think the character's not written well. I think that this is a useless way to put a female character in a movie. I think their chemistry is played up in such an over the top kind of sitcom-y way. It doesn't feel real to me. And I struggle to think of like any moment where she makes herself useful.
Temple is also my least favorite of the 3, but I still like it. I still have a good time with it. This one definitely leans more into the adventure aspect of the franchise, where the first one was a little bit more action. You had a little sense of adventure there, like we are on an adventure, but this one is definitely more like, oh, we are like deep in this adventure, like we're gonna have all these mystical supernatural stuff going on. Strap up. And Willie, I cannot stand this character at all. It's cool to see Short Round. I like Short Round. And how old were you when you realized that Temple of Doom is actually a prequel to Raiders of the Lost Ark and not a sequel?
Probably a few years ago, saw somebody share something on the internet, where you see somebody share a factoid or something like that. It does. Like when I watch the movies, it doesn't really occur to me.
Tell.
I know they put the date at the beginning, but it's one of those things where like, I don't really like keep track of that. And the stories are all sort of like, it doesn't matter as much. I don't even know if anything really happens in this movie that where they make a reference, or in Raiders that makes a reference or anything like that. But
definitely not Raiders.
Well, and this one, like the opening I really love that opening.
I do too.
Talk about a true kind of like Bond type of scene. And it feels like a big stage show. It feels like as you watch Willie perform her number, that like you're actually at the club. There's a really nice, like just real feel to it. And
it's very classy.
Yeah, it is very classy. And it's your classic, standoff at the table, a battle of wits,
Yeah. And that's one of the best characteristics of Indiana Jones is he doesn't always need the bullwhip. He's got the brains too.
Absolutely.
So I really love the set design of this movie. I will say that, just the way it's shot, and the sets look really good. And again, when I watch a movie, and especially a movie like this, like I want to be completely immersed into it. That's why I'm a big fan of James Cameron Avatar movies, because I could watch those all day. I want to go to another world. I want to go on another adventure. I think Temple of Doom does a really good job of putting you right in the middle of the adventure. That is one positive that I really do appreciate from this movie. I think Raiders is definitely the better movie. It's better written. There's better characters, but I think this is the better adventure. Of the two. So
and you feel like you feel just like the characters, that you're sort of like you're in no man's land, like it's unfit for people that grow up in not in a rural area, like in the middle of nowhere, like growing up in the States, and you see where they end up in this movie, you feel like they're totally isolated, so this movie is just really, really tough as far as whenever you're dealing with like slaves, and especially like children that are getting put into slave labor.
This movie gets pretty. Somebody said this movie created the PG-13 rating, and I could see why.
I heard it was this one, and then there was some other one that came out around the same time where they were just. I don't know if it was Poltergeist a year before or whatever it was. I can't remember, but it was a couple of these movies where they're like, well, we have to make some sort of call here. Because this movie, it definitely gets into the gore element a bit, and seeing kids getting whipped is like really rough, but then you've got great like that the chase through the mine is just this really great, really awesomely shot. You wouldn't have levels from Donkey Kong Country or from Resident Evil 4 without like a scene like that, so it's really cool to see that even back then in 84 that they were the ones that were kind of evolving the action scenes at that time.
I'll tell you what, when I think of Indiana Jones, the scene I think of first is in Temple of Doom. It is the bridge scene. Whenever
Yeah.
I think of Indiana Jones, like what is Indiana Jones? It's that bridge scene because that perfectly showcases what these movies are all about. It's funny, it's an action, it's adventure. You got these ridiculous stunts that are kind of unbelievable, but you're there for it. Like you're not really
Yeah.
questioning it too much. You're having a good time. It perfectly sums up what the franchise is to me. And Brandon says it is Poltergeist. And is this your wife, Kate? Here in chat?
That's my wife. What's happening?
She's
Kate?
lovely, by the way. I love the dates with Dave and Kate show that you guys have been doing.
Yeah,
It's
it's
great.
really fun. We have a good time talking, about movies we love, and especially, sharing the discussion with the chat. Absolutely, it's a damn good time. And I've been bugging her for months to do that. So I'm happy that we actually found a way to make it work. Chilled monkey brains. Yeah,
Dude,
That
that
scene
dinner
is-
scene is disgusting.
Yeah, that stood out as a kid. I remember that like more than anything, like sucking the guts out of the bugs.
Oh.
And just they focus on that one guy that's just like relishing in how gross it's making the Americans feel, or you know what I mean, like the Westerners,
All right, let's see. We had a couple great comments here. Ryan says Last Crusade is my favorite. We're gonna get to that one for sure.
Yeah.
The Shuffle of the Diamond and the Antidote the Party is so good. I agree. Like I said, I think it's a really strong opener.
Yeah.
Let's see. Ford and Connery have such good chemistry. I agree. We're gonna get to that.
Yeah.
So Short Round. Let's talk about Short Round. What's your kind of take on him?
I think it's a really fun element to have. I mean, it's odd for me this last time. I was like, how did these two hook up? And how is this okay that this kid is going on these adventures?
Yeah.
Because you never really get a backstory on Short Round. So,
Nope.
for all you know, he's orphaned and Indy, worked with his parents or knew his parents. Like,
Well,
do they explain that?
there is a line. I think he says he found him and he tried to pickpocket him and he just took him with him.
Oh, gotcha.
It was
Yeah,
something. It was
so-
like something that was you could tell was very last minute.
Yeah,
like shit.
I
We
think
need an
it-
explanation. Just throw that in there.
Yeah, and I
But-
think this is one of those, like, maybe the character was written in as a way to lessen the blow of the more like extreme elements of the film, to sort of like push it, without PG-13 having existed, like hoping that they could get a PG rating out of having a kid element. But I also think like back in the 80s, there was just this, you wanted children to be able to see these movies.
Yeah.
And so it's a good way of sort of giving kids that are watching the story, especially if you go back to kind of what I said about Raiders of the Lost Ark, like give kids a character that they can identify with a little
Absolutely.
bit. And Short Round is really smart. He is clever and very useful. He's a million times more useful than Willie. I love like the block on the shoe, like tied to his shoe so he can get
kids
hit
drive.
the gas pedal. Yeah. So just like really charming, and him and Indy have a great chemistry.
Oh,
so I
yeah.
think like more than anything, it comes down to that, because if that doesn't work, then the character stands out.
It's honestly a shame he never came back, and I'm not quite sure why. I don't know if that was like a scheduling
Yeah.
issue. I don't know if there was just no interest in bringing the character back. I don't know what the deal was there, but I would have liked to see Short Round again and where he is today.
I would have loved to have seen him in Dial of Destiny.
Honestly, yeah, that would have made the movie better for sure.
Make
But-
it a real legacy sequel. Bring somebody back that people would be like, "Oh, damn,"
Right?
and don't show him in the trailer. Have it be a true surprise.
You're
a
right.
true where you're like, "Oh my god, hell yeah!"
Man,
let's
Disney's
go."
getting so bad with that, aren't they? I know it's another topic, but just while we're on the
We'll get
subject,
there.
yeah. The Mind Chase is my favorite chase of the franchise. Yeah, it's definitely up there for sure.
Yeah.
You call him Dr. Jones. His lines are so
Yeah.
good.
Yeah,
He has really good
it's
writing.
great.
And then you got Willie, who is just insufferable. She's
Basically, I guess the story is that she just got the part because she was Steven Spielberg's wife.
I mean, great, good for her, but she contributed nothing.
Yeah, and she's just like half of the time she's like, "Ooh, ooh." It's just sort of like, okay, thanks for your contribution. Like,
Are
really
we
like
sure
the
kids can
squeaks.
watch this?
Yeah. She's just reacting to bugs and scary stuff. It's just the most like, what? Why is this a cartoon all of a sudden?
Yeah, they had a reunion at the Oscars when he won his Oscar for Everything Everywhere All at Once, which is a great movie. And they also reunited at D23 when they were doing like the Dial of Destiny presentation. He was there for like Loki season 2 or something like that. And Harrison Ford was there.
Don't know.
But
I think they missed out on that one by not trying to bring him back.
Yeah.
Unless he truly wasn't interested. You figure we would hear about it though.
Yeah, for sure. I'm sure he would do it. I don't see why he wouldn't. But so yeah, Temple of Doom, it is a good time. I don't like it nearly as much as I do for Raiders, but I can sit and watch it. I can enjoy it outside of Willie and some of the dialogue and stuff like that. I really do think it is a fun adventure, and it is a good time for 2 hours. So
oh my god, yeah, absolutely.
Temple of Doom, is that all we kind of wanted to say on that one there?
I think so. Yeah, I think I can't think of anything else I'd like to add there. I mean, it is really cool to see Indy so far removed. What's really cool too is he's not, in a way, it's a life and death kind of adventure because the kids are, under this slavery, but at the same time, it's like, it's almost just like a superstition around this, this artifact that these people want. So he's just sort of, all he's really doing in an essence is like bringing peace and harmony back to this village. So it's kind of cool to see Indy work in, it's a big adventure, but it's for like a relatively small cause. That's kind of a cool, as you go through the movies, all the other MacGuffins are so like world changing Infinity Stone kind of stuff. And here we just have where these people are like, hey, our gods told us that they were going to send you. So thanks for coming. And we need this thing back. Can you please go get it for us? Really appreciate it. It's almost like a video game before video games had those kinds of epic plots.
Very Tomb Raider, yeah.
Oh yeah, man, Tomb Raider is like got to be so incredibly inspired by these,
by
these movies. It's like, yeah, and what you said about the bridge is a really nice kind of like encapsulates Indy as a character, where he's sort of like he's willing to risk his own life if it's gonna result in the right cause. He's willing to sacrifice for the end to be the right end. So at that point, he's kind of like, well, maybe I'll make it, maybe I won't, but I know these guys are not getting this artifact back. So here we go.
And that says so much about who he is. Yeah. And I think that carries throughout the whole franchise. I don't think it was just an isolated incident where it's just in that one moment and then it's forgotten about. No, like that carries over, which I appreciate.
Absolutely.
Do you think real alligators were used for the ending? I don't know.
They looked like real alligators.
They look real like to me, but
fake body parts, or maybe they took like animal limbs and just wrapped them and tried to make them look like But to me, it looks real. I think they reuse one of those shots. I love that in movies where they just reuse a shot. I think they even do it when Willie and Short Round are hanging off the bridge. They like show this shot and then they show a different shot and then they go back and it's like the same audio that they use for Willie. Like, oh no, just like, I love seeing that stuff in movies. I don't know why. I'm like, yeah, use it again.
And of course, anytime the Wilhelm scream pops up,
which pops up in every single one of George Lucas's movies.
Exactly.
I mean, most movies, but every one of his, And every time it happens, I lean over to Kate and I'm like, Wilhelm scream.
Exactly. And did you think that we were going to do the show and not throw one in there?
And a great band. I love that band.
I don't want to
the Wilhelm scream. They're fun.
Yeah. No CG back then, baby. Hell yeah. Dude, I love practical. Okay, just let me look at my notes here. I think that was about everything that I wanted to talk about. Other than the dialogue is definitely way more goofy, and you said sitcom-y, and I would have to agree with that.
The whole bit where Willie and Harrison are having like their rooms are across from one another, and she's acting like she's not interested, even though she is, and he's like, you'll be knocking on my door in 5 minutes or whatever. I think maybe she says that, and it just, to me, it feels very like pilot episode of a sitcom trying to set up this like will they, won't they, and I'm just sort of like, in this movie, I don't really have time for this. Like, either you guys get it on or you just serve as counterparts that help each other through this adventure. You don't necessarily need the romantic element in all of these movies, but I get why they do it because it creates tension.
And then you get to the ending, and Willie is just like, you think I'm going on any more adventures with you? I'm going back to my glamorous life. I'm like, good, go ahead.
Yeah. See ya. Bye,
See you.
Felicia.
Bye, Felicia. All right, let's go ahead and get into the final chapter, shall we? The final chapter of the Indiana Jones trilogy, Indiana
Yeah.
Jones and the Last Crusade. Your thoughts?
Well, this is easily my favorite still to this day. I think this is the most complete Indiana Jones story. I think that there's no weak points at all. Like I was saying earlier about layering the types of villainy they go through. I mean, you get that great opening scene, which I think the opening scenes in most of these movies are pretty strong.
I agree.
But even going into the story of, him looking for the Grail, when he's in Italy with Elsa, going through the catacombs, and they've got like the Knights Templar chase them, and you think that they're villains, but you really just find out they're just trying to protect the Grail. So, but there's a great action set piece there that has stakes. And then, after that, we find out that the guy that hired Indy is with the Nazis. We find out Elsa's with the Nazis. And then we meet the actual Nazis that are like, the head of the group. So there's all these layers where everything kind of unfolds. It moves along. It never gets boring. Sean Connery is a perfect cast for Indy's dad. Not only just with the chemistry they have, but also the whole Bond connection. It's really cool for them to come together. They've got some great comedic moments that go over your head as a kid. And then when you become an adult, you realize, oh my God, these guys both banged Elsa. That's wild. And yeah, I mean, man, River Phoenix as young Indy is a great cast. That's a really cool action scene there. That whole opening is great. And when you were showing that video at the beginning and they show the Grail book and the guy walking across, the leap from the lion's head, I got goosebumps, just overcame my entire body, because that production design, that prop design there on that book looks as real as anything I've ever seen in a movie. Like, I completely believe that book has been through hell and back, and it's like 100 or 200 years old. Like Indy's great grandfather had that book or something. So really cool. And the way they mix in the religious elements with World War II, I mean, chef's kiss. This movie can do no wrong in my mind. I love every second.
Yeah, Sean Connery, you don't get a better casting choice than Sean Connery. Him and Harrison Ford played so well off of each other. I believe that they were father and son. I believe that they had a lot of problems in their relationship. I bought into every second of it. And this is a character that we followed for 2 movies now. And to throw it, well, look, here's his dad. Here's where he came from. Like, you buy every second of it. It is, and to have Sala back here kind of brings that full circle. And like I said, in my eyes, this is the last of the Indiana Jones franchise, and it does kind of tie up this trilogy in a nice little bow. It's a really fun adventure, and the whole MacGuffin is the Holy Grail. Like, where do you go from there? That alone even feels like a kind of a conclusion on itself. It's like, okay, what else can we go after the Holy Grail, which is a great adventure. You have the whole he chose poorly, like so many great Dad, what? Dad, like that. There's so many great moments in this movie. It's definitely my most rewatched one. It is my favorite of the 3 as well. When I want to watch an Indiana Jones movie, this is usually the first one I put in, for sure.
This one, so many classic scenes. I mean, I really like too the way that they handle, Jones Sr. is super religious. So I find that they do a good job of handling that. I think a lot of times now in like newer movies, somebody may be like mocked for being like devout in their faith or something, like there would be like jokes about it. But here it's more like Indy is sort of kind of put back in a spot of feeling like a kid again. Like his dad has always made him feel like a kid, but that also he, kind of through this 3 movie journey finds a way to like respect that that part of history, and realizes in this film that it's not just made up stuff, that there's like that this is real. So I think it's really cool to see. I love watching characters learn and change. I love character arcs, and I think in this movie we get a really good arc of like Indy finally finding some faith, and finding like a faith that that his father in a sense like gave him, that he fought his whole entire life, because it seems like that's like a big cornerstone of their animosity, is that the father's search for the Grail, the obsession with the Grail, which totally ties into all that religious stuff. So again, properly motivated, it makes sense that he's like, oh, this religious mumbo jumbo. And there's that one line where he's like, Jesus Christ, Dad, and he gets slapped.
Yeah.
He's like, that's blasphemy. And I'm like,
and,
oh, damn.
and that's kind of a conflict for Indiana Jones himself throughout the whole franchise, is that he is a man of science. He's a man of mathematics. He knows what he can practically see. You know, he doesn't really believe in what he can't see. So for it to come to a head here with Sean Connery's character as his dad, no less, I think it's a really great creative way for Indiana Jones to kind of face that part of himself. You know, be like, okay, we've talked about it, we've touched on it, but we haven't really fully addressed it, and they do that here, and it's done so well. And again, like his whole character arc that he has in Last Crusade in particular is really, really good. We named the dog Indiana.
We named the dog Indiana.
So good.
And you're talking about epic action scenes, man. That whole scene with the tank, towards the end when they're near the crescent, the canyon of the crescent moon or whatever. That whole scene is so epic. I mean, you know, hanging from the gun of the tank as they push it up against the side of the mountain, and he's just like really in that spot, and then you know, taking the German gun and like shooting through like the three guys, and he like looks at the gun. Great, you know, comedic moment, and really fun, like kind of, I think it's a matte painting when the tank goes over the side of the canyon and the guy's like on top, like kind of hanging out of the top, falling down or whatever. Yeah, really classic. And that whole using like Petra as like the temple of where it's all at, really beautiful you know, location there.
Kate says Indy always says his dad wasn't there for him. They finally have a chance to sit down and talk, and they don't have anything to talk about. So many great moments. Well, the thing is, they have a lot to talk about, but just as guys, as part of the guy code, they just choose not to talk about it. And I related to that because I'm a guy, and I was like, yeah, we do that shit. It's like, we got shit to say, we just choose not to.
I think it's a
great moment, though.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that they both like learn. I think his dad learns to respect him a bit, and he learns that maybe everything that his dad was doing his whole entire life was actually, you know, preparing him for that moment, because as he's going through the trials at the end, of course, he's got the book as reference, but the whole, like, you know, stepping on the J for Jehovah, but then he realizes himself like, oh yeah, it begins with an I. So it's like, he wouldn't have known that if his dad wasn't the kind of guy that made him like recite the alphabet in Greek and study all this kind of religious stuff as well. So it's just really cool how it all ties together.
Yeah. In the first Indiana Jones film, the whole film would have gone relatively the same if Indiana Jones didn't exist. That's a great point.
Yeah, that's what I've seen that, and there's been a whole, I don't know if it was like cracked.com or whatever did a whole thing on that, but yeah, that's a big one with Raiders of the Lost Ark.
The finale of Last Crusade, when Indy has to take the tests of faith, is my favorite finale of the series. Yeah. In a series that all these movies have great finales. Would you agree with that? Do you think they all have pretty good, like, third act / finales?
Yeah, I think, well, I don't think so with Dial of Destiny, but I think, yeah, all the other ones, like, have a, you know, you can tell that the culmination of the story is coming, and they're still able to surprise you. So it's certainly with the first three, I think the finales are all, you know, really great. I mean, this one, that whole last act is just a really nice, like, you know, 35, 40 minutes where it's just like, there's not 1 second of downtime, really. It's, and those trials as a kid, I loved that whole thing. Again, kind of video gamey as far as like kneeling and then having to, you know, do the somersault on the ground to avoid the blades. Just that whole thing just seemed really cool. Yeah, the rats in the catacombs, all that kind of stuff. That's another one. Man, when he steps through the J and then he's like hanging, and there's that really cool kind of matte painting of just that chasm below him, and it's just like absolute like 100-foot drop to death, you know. Just a really, the whole interaction with the knight in the room with all the phony grails, like all of that, you know. And it's this, again, like Indy having to put his brains and his, you know, experience as a professor to surmise like which cup would be the right cup, So it's one of those things where everyone else would have it totally wrong. He finds the one cup where he's like, yeah, that looks like a piece of clay that's been around for a couple thousand years.
Yep. All right. So Last Crusade, we love it. It's both of our favorites, I think, that we've said so far in the whole trilogy here. But unfortunately, as much as we don't like it, there are two more. There are two more that we have to get through. So let's go to 2008 when Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull came out. Now, I was around when this movie was coming out. Like, I remember, like, the hype building up to it. Everyone was excited. There's a new Indiana Jones movie coming out. Shia LaBeouf was really hot at the time, thanks to movies like Transformers and Disturbia. Even Stevens he had already done at that point. So Shia LaBeouf was already becoming a big name. He's joining the Indiana Jones franchise. People were excited. I was excited. And then the movie comes out. What did you think about it?
So I just saw it for the first time like a week and a half ago or something like that, a couple weeks ago. And I thought it looked pretty cheap for being a quote unquote big budget movie. It's really interesting, like the way that the studio system is in 2008 versus 89 when The Last Crusade came out. It looks like they just tried to shoot on the cheap as much as they could. I just noticed, I don't know if it's green screens, but just like kind of cheap looking sets. Yeah. Seems like they fill in the rest. And I thought, really the first action scene, like the motorcycle chase after they caused like that fight at the little diner, I really liked that. I was like, at that point, I'm like, okay, this feels really good. And this feels just over the top enough to where it matches there's plenty of over the top moments in the original trilogy. Oh, yes. The raft falling as the parachute falling out of the plane is like completely absurd. Like they would have died a million times on that whole thing. So there's like the kind of part where Indy's sort of like almost like hooky bobbing on the back of the bike. He's not sitting on the bike yet. And I'm like, granted, he's an older guy, but okay, this is a fun adventure movie. And that scene, I was like, this looks pretty good. I'm fine with Shia LaBeouf in there. I really like him as a performer, but he didn't really stand out too much here for me. But I thought for this movie, for as much shit as it got when it came out, I was like, well, this, Spielberg did it. It still feels like an Indiana Jones movie to me, but it feels a little cheap. Like, I just don't think, I think they could have, put the, a little more money into in-camera effects to kind of give it that look and feel of the original trilogy. But it's got a little bit more of a comparing original Star Wars to prequel Star Wars kind of feel.
Yeah, and I think that's fair too. Because you are kind of bringing a franchise back after so many years, and it's so beloved by so many people. It's spanned across generations at this point. So I could totally see the comparison there. Yeah, I saw it when it first came out in 2008. I saw it in theaters once, and then I watched it again when it came out on home video, and I have not watched it since then up until yesterday. Yesterday was the first time since 2008 that I've gone back and watched this movie. Is it as bad as I remember? No. I will say there are some more positives in here than I was expecting to get on this watch. There are things about it that I do like and I do think we're promising. But as far as overall goes, yeah, this is just one that I'm not a fan of. Like you said, it definitely feels more cheap. You could definitely tell that they went less practical, more CGI with it. I don't like the whole bringing in the aliens. Like, the Crystal Skull is an awesome MacGuffin. Like, it just design wise, it looks great. I think it's an interesting idea, but I just like aliens and Indiana Jones just like don't really mix for me.
It's like they wanted to move away from the religious stuff for whatever reason. And I kind of get it, but at the same time, like, you don't have to just deal with like Catholicism or Judaism or anything like that, because Temple of Doom did something that was totally outside of that box. So yeah, it does feel a little like they're starting to kind of stretch it into a bit more of a sci-fi rather than just a fantasy,
Yeah. One thing this movie does that bothers me, and they do this in Dial of Destiny as well, is when you can't get an actor back, that's completely okay. But they automatically, their go-to is to kill the character off in between movies. Like, that's they don't give any other explanation, like, oh, they're off doing this right now. No, it's just, okay, dead. Like, what if they wanted to come back someday? And in this one, Marcus and Henry both dead in between movies here, which sucks. Because now, obviously with Sean Connery we couldn't, but I would have liked to see them at least leave the door open, even if they never brought him back.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you're not going to try to get some emotion out of the audience.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, they kind of do. They show just a picture of Sean Connery and play some sad music, but it's like, man, after like an opening scene,
really
you could
quick,
show
though, yeah.
you could show Indy like at his father's funeral. Like you could show like, you know what I mean? You could, if that's going to be a big part of the story, and because maybe that could, something like losing his father could play into him wanting to make a real connection with his son. And so he sees a point where it's like, ooh, I can connect with my son. I just lost my dad. And then for the audience, it gives us that time to see Indy in a way we've never seen him before, see him vulnerable, and have the emotion resonate instead of it just being, it's kind of washed over, you know, just seeing the picture. It's just sort of like, okay, well, he's gone. Yeah, I feel like this movie doesn't really want to, you know, further the story in that way. They're just like, all right, let's jump in the saddle and see if we can hand things off to Shia LaBeouf.
Exactly. And that's pretty much what this movie was trying to do, was leave it off in a way where Shia LaBeouf would be the next face of the Indiana Jones franchise. And speaking of Shia LaBeouf, I like this guy as a performer, as you were talking about. There's a lot of his movies that I've liked. I know that guy has gone a little bit off the rails sometimes. We all go through stuff, but as a performer, I think he's a really dedicated actor. Like, even if he's not given the best material to work with, like, he actually cares. Like, he actually tries. And that's the case here as well. And I think Shia LaBeouf was good casting as Indiana Jones' son. I do think he could have been capable of carrying this franchise. The problem is they give him nothing to do. They don't do him any favors in that script. And he's really not given much to work with in terms of performance either. And it's really unfortunate because I think he could have done well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he's just a really interesting guy, great performer. Seems like the kind of guy that could, you know, shoot the shit with anyone, like on a personal level. He just seems kind of like regular. And I think he brings just sort of like whenever he's, you know, working in a movie like in Transformers, it's like he's such a good character for like the audience to relate with, or such a good performer.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's what he's doing here, is he's sort of like, he's kind of the window for the audience into the whole world. And for whatever reason, it feels like in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, they didn't want to, like, one thing that they did better, I think, in Dial of Destiny, which we'll talk about more, is I think like Indiana Jones's sidekick definitely has more to do and is pushing the story along a little bit more. So I think, they could have leaned into that a little bit with, is Mutt, is that his name?
Mutt,
the character?
Yep.
Yeah, so he could have sort of been pushing a little bit more, and while Indy sort of, you know, takes a step back. But yeah, they didn't want to fully commit. And yeah, it's a shame. It is a damn shame that they weren't able to do that handoff. And like you said, you know, killing him off, you know, in the script for the following movie just sort of seems like careless. Like you said, you leave, you're closing that door. Yeah. And I'll talk about that, you know, we'll talk about that more when we get to that movie, because I think there are opportunities in that movie that they miss out on because of the way they wrote the script.
Raymond says they should have cast a different actor than Shia. They just didn't have any. I think Shia was fine, but I agree he doesn't have much chemistry with Harrison Ford. I do think he could have been capable of carrying on the franchise. I do think he would have been a likable lead had the script been better, had he had more of a character to work with. But I do agree that him and Harrison Ford didn't really have the best chemistry on screen.
Yeah, I think like Harrison in these you know, fourth and fifth movies, I'm really just not feeling the commitment from him. It's not bad by any means. I think he's, you know, a good actor. I've never seen him act poorly, but I definitely am not feeling like the fire in the last two. So I feel a little bit of the tiredness,
man, at this point.
No, and like, and and it's like I feel it in the performance. So I think like maybe that, you know, obviously I think the chemistry is always going to be a shared responsibility between the two performers, and I think Harrison just didn't really bring it in, you know, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull or Dial of Destiny the way that he did in the previous films.
I agree. Now, they do have moments together that I like, but it's very few and far between. Like that moment, we saw that in the little tribute when he's on the bike and he's like, if you want to be an archaeologist, you got to get out of the library. Like that moment. And when he sees him fighting, he's like, you're a teacher? And he's like, part-time. Like they do have little moments like that I enjoy, but it's really, it's not enough to save the movie for me. But there is more positives in this than I was expecting to going in. So what's another positive from Crystal Skull that you have?
Well, I think that, even though that last action scene where they're going through the jungle gets a little bit ridiculous with the CG, I do appreciate in this movie, especially compared to Dial of Destiny, the way that I feel like the story just moves along smoothly. It seems a little less, paint by numbers. The action to me is more engaging in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull than it is in Dial of Destiny. So I felt like the movie, to me, even though it's not, great compared to the originals, it didn't feel like a slog. Like I wasn't like, falling asleep or losing my patience or anything like that, which I maybe had that issue with Dial of Destiny. We'll see. So yeah, I will say this about that film, as far as like being a George Lucas production in 2008, based on everything I heard, I thought it was going to be a complete train wreck. But I found myself enjoying it more than I had anticipated. That's for sure.
Yeah. I definitely like it a little bit more than I remember. It's not enough for me to full on say I like the movie, because I still don't like the movie. But I had more fun watching it this time than I did when it first came out.
Yeah.
And one of those reasons is we get the return of Marion in this movie, which I was really happy about. And I think she's great. I think they do a good job writing her back into this movie. I think they give her a nice, really good story. It's like, he's your son, I didn't tell you, like you left, blah, blah, blah. Like, is it generic? And have we seen that 100 times before? Yes, but I like seeing those characters together again.
Yeah.
So that was a really good time. I really enjoyed that. And you really get to see them like bicker as a family, which I don't like that instantly they're a family, by the way. That is one negative that I do have. It's like, you're my son? Great, come here, son. He's like, whoa.
Yeah.
It reminds me of Scott when he meets Dr. Evil for the first time in Austin Powers. I haven't seen you my whole life, and now you just come back and expect a relationship.
Yeah, no, exactly.
But no, I do like seeing them kind of go back and forth with their banter. That was really fun. I will say that.
Yeah, I like when they're first talking about it, and he's like, or Indiana's basically telling Mutt, like, I don't know if I remember your mom, like there were a lot of women or whatever, because I don't think at that point Mutt had like told him
he said her
mom's
name was Mary, not Marion, but yeah.
Oh,
he's like, there was a lot of Mary's kid or something like that.
Yeah,
like, watch, that's my mom.
Like,
it was like,
yeah, exactly. He's ready to throw down right there with this old guy. He's just like, I'm gonna kick your ass. Yeah, and maybe one of the, they do that whole like Marlon Brando look for Mutt, which is like the, what's the movie that the classic? I always forget everything on live streams. It's hilarious. There's that classic, Marlon Brando on the motorcycle. Jacket with the little cap on. So they go for this look that, like, I don't know if people really dress like that. It's just like a character in a movie dressed like that. They were kind of
it was the
enamored
50s,
with that look.
and greasers were a big thing in the 50s. So I think in the 50s there was a lot of that. Yeah.
But it's one of those things where I'm like, well, maybe Mutt as a character would have worked a little bit better if he's like a hardcore nerd and he's not like an adventure tough guy, and his dad Indiana Jones is gonna like teach him how to like do all this really cool shit. So
he goes on the adventure to read the books, to translate. Like that's what he's there for. Like that gives him a purpose. A
little something to do, and to be like in awe of his father, but also like I can't really, I don't know if I can handle this kind of thing too. Come to daddy, says Brad.
Come to daddy. John Hurt was good for what he had to work. Again, he wasn't given too much to work with here. Antonis says, hello, Jonesy. Hello, Mac. Remember the Scorpion scene? Last Crusade? Scorpion scene? Is that what we're talking about?
It must be Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and I guess I am forgetting it as well.
Jog my memory once. There. Brandon says Kate Blanchett does a great job with her weird hair. Okay. Kate Blanchett, amazing Oscar-winning actress, one of the best actresses working in Hollywood today. I absolutely love her. What the fuck was she doing in this movie is my question. I did not like her character at all. Like, again, performance-wise, she gives it her all, as she always does.
Yeah.
It's the script. It's awful. It's that Russian accent that she's doing. Like she's a fantastic actress. That accent did not do it for me one bit. What's your kind of thoughts on her?
I almost like don't really remember her too much. Like I feel like she's not in the movie that as much as other villains are. you know,
Yeah.
in the throughout the franchise, where I'm sort of like I'm trying to remember like what was the memorable moment, you know, that she has.
Kate's coming in to save the day when
Oh
Shia
yeah,
gets stung by a scorpion, and he explains
look
it's
at
better to
that.
be stung by the big ones. Great. Her accent's
Yeah,
dreadful. She said. Yeah,
yeah,
it's pretty bad.
it is odd because Kate Blanchett, like between that movie and then between playing Hela in Ragnarok, I'm just
Hmm.
sort of like, what a waste of an incredible talent.
Oh
Like
my
I
god, yeah.
thought I thought Hela looked so cool. I love the way the comic book character looks. I think Kate Blanchett is, you know, has the angular look to pull off this menacing villain. And I'm just like, yeah, like you said, let down by the script. Like, where is the meat on the bone? Because the weird haircut is weird, but it is very like iconic. It's got this
Yeah,
memorable
it
look
stands
to it.
out.
Your villain should stand out in some sort of way. It's not like you know, Courtney Cox's Bangs in Scream 3 or anything like
Oh my god.
that. It's she's more like a Spock. It's like a Spock haircut
Yeah.
pre Star Trek, you know.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. We talked about Russian Kate Blanchett. There's a character in this movie called Ox, and Ox is a really important piece of this whole puzzle. I gotta be honest, we don't get too much of him, but I like when he's on screen, even though his mind has gone completely crazy, and you know it's not intentionally funny. I do get entertainment value out of that character a little bit. Again, something that kind of lifted the movie up for me because there's really not much else to enjoy about this movie. So I gotta try to find the little things to enjoy, and that was definitely something that I was like, okay, this is entertaining. But
Now, is he the guy that's the double agent guy?
oh, the I love that line, by the way. I don't know.
Triple agent?
Yeah, the triple agent. No, I lied about being a double agent or something like
Yeah.
that.
Is that who? Wait, so is that Ox?
No,
Or somebody
Ox
else?
is like the
I'm-
crazy-haired Albert Einstein looking like guy. He was, you know, he was the one who was obsessed, and Shia was looking for him. He's like he's gone missing.
Oh, gotcha.
Blah,
Okay,
blah,
yeah,
blah.
yeah.
But another really great scene is the quicksand, and the only way to save Indy is for him to grab on a snake, which, as we know, he hates snakes. So that scene
Yeah.
where to see Indiana Jones like genuinely terrified, but he knows he's got to do it if he wants to get out. That's a very well executed scene, I will say.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really well done scene. It might be one of my favorite moments in the franchise just because of the entertainment value that's there.
Yeah, it's one of those cool, like I like that quirk about Indy. Like there's not much that he is, you know, scared of, but he's got that one thing that like he'll jump into any other situation, but with snakes, like not happening. I love it. It's like Popeye with his spinach, you know.
Let's see. Anton says, I also love the fight scene between Indy and the Russian. There were a couple decent fight scenes in there, but again, the special effects didn't look the best. And that kind of
Yeah,
goes down a little bit.
when the one guy starts getting like eaten by the ants, it's like sort of in the background, and it even looks bad for background CG. Where I'm like, oh
Yeah.
my god, he's like bubbling. It's like this very odd effect where I'm like, man, you'd think that like Lucasfilm would be able to make sure that those things look really good. You know,
Yeah, you would think.
you're making a $200 million movie. You'd figure that that would be the least of your issues.
So yeah, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, I will say there are things I enjoyed about it this time around. It's not a great movie. I don't like if I'm marathoning in Indiana Jones, I'm gonna stop at Last Crusade still. Like
Yeah.
this didn't change my mind about going back to this movie very often. I do think there's potential there, but you know, they just didn't really follow through on that. I do kind of like the ending of this movie, where we finally have that resolution with Indiana and Marion and tying the knot. It's like after 4 movies, it finally happened. And again, that's been our favorite of the Jones girls at this point. So it's good to see that that's the one that came back. Could you
Oh, for
imagine
sure,
if Willie
yeah.
came back in Crystal Skull instead of Marion?
Oh my god. And I mean Elsa's hot, don't get me wrong. Like Elsa's super hot, but
Yeah,
she's a Nazi and she's dead. So
So yeah, she didn't really have that longevity, I don't think. Where I feel
No,
like,
not
like
at
Marianne's a fighter. We were talking like she's a fighter. She will go down swinging.
Yeah.
And I love that about her. So I do think it is a good little conclusion for them.
yeah.
And then yeah, as far as Shia taking on the mantle, I would have been okay with it. I would have given another one a shot if they did, because
Yeah.
everyone has a bad day at the office, but they chose not to go that route. People didn't like this movie, understandably so. I get it. And then in 2023, we got Indiana Jones, and The Dial of Destiny, the 5th in the franchise. Harrison Ford's final chapter, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
So, Dial of Destiny, like I said at the top of the show, I watched this for the first time earlier today. You watched it for the first time a couple days ago. What were your thoughts on Dial of Destiny?
This thing felt like the longest damn movie I've ever watched. And I watched Mystery Science Theater 3000. So I've seen some really bad movies, poorly constructed movies. This thing, technically speaking, looks great and sounds great. But I think a lot of the performances are lacking. And I think the story is full of holes. It's a giant mess to me. This literally feels like a video game where all it is like, let's talk about the MacGuffin for a minute, and then the bad guys are hot on our tail, so let's run. And there's a chase scene, and then they get a break, and they get to talk more, and there's a chase scene. It just seems like this rinse and repeat. This movie just bored the hell out of me. And I think a big part of it is the same 3 villains for the whole movie. So I think that, to me, was pretty rough. I feel like Mads just sort of phones in his performance. I never saw him ratchet up his intensity, really. There's a couple moments where he raises his voice at the end, but I wanted to see like a wild-eyed stare and just something like next level with him. And, you know, we can get into, you know, the little other pieces of the movie, but like first blush, like this one is the worst out of the 5, in my opinion. And it might just kill the franchise.
I agree. I did not think that they could do worse than Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. My thought was only way to go is up, right?
Yeah.
Boy, was I wrong. They somehow found a way to be worse than Crystal Skull. You were talking about the runtime. I'm not one who typically complains about long run times, as long as the pacing's good, as long as the story is good, as long as I'm engaged. This movie I wasn't. However, Matt Reeves is the Batman. That's a 3-hour movie. I love that movie. I could watch that on repeat. That's how much I love that movie. Dial of Destiny here, I'll be honest, I never want to watch again, to be quite. I have no desire to revisit it. There was nothing in there that I found enjoyable enough to be like, well, maybe if I'm in a mood, maybe I'll just find that clip on YouTube. There's no clips from Dial of Destiny that I want to watch on YouTube. Dial of Destiny, and we're talking about Harrison's tired, and you could tell he's tired. I do think that the quest is interesting. I do think it is an interesting little concept. I love Mads Mikkelsen. I think he always does a great job playing villains, but you're right. It does feel like he's kind of phoning it in here. Again, we run into the same problem. Mutt was killed off screen in between movies, which closes the door on Shia ever returning. You know, because they explained it. If you guys missed that bit, it's a very quick mention of it. But he goes, he enlisted just to piss me off, and he got himself killed. So he died in Vietnam, and that's it. That's all we get of Mutt. And it's just like, you could have brought that character back. But I do like, they did this in Force Awakens as well, where him and his ex-wife have just kind of fallen out in between movies. It's literally like the same character arc as Han Solo in The Force Awakens.
To me it's lazy writing when you're just like, well, if we can't afford this actress we can only afford her for this amount of time, so we need to write the story around this, or we just need to, you know, it's kind of a running theme in these like legacy sequels is like, well, now the hero is a totally broken man that's like lost his will to live. He's lost everything that he like accumulated in his life, relationship wise, and everything else. And it's just this really odd, like, I think it's just a bit too easy. Like maybe if it happened every once in a while in these movies, maybe it would be, you know, kind of like a little better earned. But like when you see a character like, you know, it's like exactly what Lucasfilm did to Luke Skywalker with The Last Jedi. And now they've done it with Indiana Jones. And it starts to feel like you guys are just trying to find a lazy way out of the story instead of trying to find something properly motivated and, you know, try to write the character in a graceful way. Because certainly losing a child could cause a problem in a relationship. They could have dove into that a bit more. I actually was kind of like, so you're doing this movie about this timepiece or this thing that supposedly can cause time travel. Never once is it brought into the story, or at least I can't remember, that he wants to use it to save Mutt.
Right. Like,
is that ever brought in there?
Yeah, Helena, who is very, very selfish. I would argue that, you know, Indy deserves to be a little selfish himself. Like that could have been a great way to be like, I'm gonna go back and stop my son from ever enlisting, something like that. I don't
Yeah.
know.
And ultimately he is kind of selfish. Like when they
Yeah.
go through that portal and they find themselves
He
in
wants to stay.
Syracuse in 212 BC, which makes zero sense for everything that we've learned about this
That
character,
whole
that
like
he
twist
wants
there.
to
That whole
Yeah.
twist there of like you went to the wrong war. I was just like, no,
Yeah.
we didn't. Come on. Like,
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
So that's another thing that I have an issue with too, because you find out, I don't know, hopefully everyone in the chat's seen this movie,
Yeah,
but you
spoilers,
basically find
sorry.
out that Mads Mikkelsen is like, well, I'm going to actually, like, I'm not going to go back and kill anyone from the Allies. I want to go back to World War II and I want to kill Hitler because I know where Hitler messed up. So I'm going to take over and I'm going to make
So
sure that
lazy.
my side wins. And so even though they bring in the whole thing with like the continental drift and everything to try to explain why they don't go back to 1939, I do feel like the last act of the movie, how crazy would it have been if you put Indiana Jones in this position where he has to essentially stop Hitler's assassination to make sure that the Allies win the war,
To make
which
sure everything
again
plays
goes,
out how it's supposed to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
which goes back to his whole idea, you know, chopping down the bridge of like, sometimes like there is a sacrifice, but the ultimate like result of the sacrifice is the best result that we can get. So we need to go with that. So that would have been, to me, maybe some more stakes. But at the same time, I caught myself asking, why did they bring Indy? Why didn't they kill Indy? Why did they bring him on the plane? These Nazis, when they go back to Syracuse,
what do they need
their
him
guns
for?
at the boats?
I'd say at that point they have pretty much everything they need, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Like to me, I'm like, are you only bringing him there just to like show him, to rub it in his face? And if so, say that to the audience, because I feel like at that point in the movie, Indy's only alive for the audience. It's the most contrived way of just showing us what the writers wanted to show us instead of showing us the way that the story should naturally progress.
Well, funny you mentioned that. Brandon says, James Mangold wasn't the problem. I do agree with that. Kathleen wanted to kill off Indy officially and use Helena to steal all of Indy's accomplishment. Could you imagine?
Well, and it's funny because I've heard that too, and I think the way that they wrap up the story doesn't necessarily, like, I thought Helena as a character, I mean, like the whole like selfishness when you can totally see through all that and you know she's gonna make like ultimately the right decisions with her life. I thought Phoebe Waller-Bridge she was probably the most engaging performer here for me.
She did a good performance.
Like she's pretty high energy, but it's also like Harrison's pretty low energy. And so I felt like, you know, as far as all that stuff goes, like I thought she was actually one of the more enjoyable parts of the movie. That's how boring this movie is to me.
She really, I couldn't stand her.
Yeah, not every moment did I really like. I especially don't like the end. Like, we don't even get to see how they get back from 212 BC Syracuse.
No, they're just there.
She just punches him out, and we wake up back in 1969.
And she's like, "Oh,
and
hey,
I'm like,
here's your ex-wife,"
Yeah.
which we'll talk
So I
about,
think,
by the way.
like,
But yeah,
not everything with her character I liked, but there were moments where I was like, all right, like I'm engaged in what she's doing. It's just it was like everything else that kind of didn't work for me. I had a tough time understanding what Harrison Ford was saying about half of the time. And even Mads, I had a tough time understanding. And if you're going to AI fix his face in the opening scene, can't they do AI voice work? Why is it old man Indy with young Indy face in the opening scene? Did you notice that his voice is not?
I noticed that in the trailer too. Like when the trailer came out, I noticed that. I'm like, I hope that's fixed in the movie. It was.
Yeah, they have that with deep fake technology. So I'm just like, another example of this, you know, billions upon billions of you know, dollars of wealth that Disney has, yet they cheap out on something that like you know, a comedian can do on YouTube with their voice. It blows my mind. Dial of Destiny is an absolute mess. Unfortunately,
Travis calls it the diaper of Destin, the diaper ash cream. Old Harrison probably is wearing diapers at this point. Let's see. All they did was make jokes about how old Indy is. Yeah, like we got it, right? Like they kept beating that over the head with that. But I hate how they make Indy a miserable old man. I just really don't buy it.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't either. And Raymond says, I feel like they were hinting at Helena taking over. Again, same thing with Shia LaBeouf. They had set this character up. Character which, to be honest, I didn't like the whole movie. I do like her more than Willie. I will take Helena over Willie any day. I think her performance is pretty good for what she's given to do. And I do like her at the end. Like, I do like the character arc that she goes through. But by the time we get there at the end, it was already too late. Like, they didn't start making that turn a little bit sooner into the film. They really kind of saved that until the last minute, and by that point I just didn't care. But yeah, so imagine if they did continue this and we don't have Harrison Ford and she's the new face of the franchise. How would you feel about that?
I just don't see like much of a point, right? Because you can't call it Indiana Jones if it's not Indiana Jones. So it's like then you have to like use the same kind of iconography and the same font like for her name if you really want it to be like canonically tied. So I think like, you know, it's kind of a fool's errand for them to try to do these, you know, unless you're going to use a direct descendant of him to try to do this handoff. It's almost like, I would say what's more likely is in like 15 years, we just get like another Indiana Jones story with a different actor playing Indiana Jones. And like maybe even somebody that isn't a star right now, but would maybe like rise to prominence. Cause I know everyone says Chris Pratt, but he's already in everything. And by that time, he'll probably be too old to start doing Indiana Jones, you know?
Yeah. I like Chris Pratt overall, but right now I'm really burnt out on Chris Pratt, to be honest with you.
That's just, I think Hollywood just throws the same few actors at you and you're kind of like, oh my God. Like, honestly, what probably would have been a smart idea is like in 08 is have like Ashton Kutcher play his son because they look alike. And then you can hand it off like, because at least that way you've got like somebody that looks like him, or you just, you know, if he happened to have been younger, I just think you find somebody that kind of looks close enough to Indiana Jones and you just tell another Indiana Jones story that's just a serial that just fits in there. And maybe you put it in 1928, maybe you put it in 1947, like depending on the age of the actor. And just like Bond, we just sort of like replace him and try to find somebody that is the right fit, you know, is probably the better way to go.
Yeah. So no, I'm not a fan of Dial of Destiny. There's a couple of things in here that I like Antanas brings up a really good one. The return of Sala again in Dial of Destiny. He, again, it's always a delight seeing John Rhys Davies as his character. And he really is kind of like the heart of the movie, even though he's not in the movie much. When he's on screen, he's talking about how he misses the desert and the glory days. And he's got this beautiful moment that he has with Indiana Jones. And then, again, he's gone as quick as he's in the movie.
I wish that he would. I wanted him to go on that adventure when he's like, I'm going to go.
Imagine if he went. He would have at least had the heart and soul the whole time.
Yeah, it would have been something. They bring in that little kid Teddy as like Helena's little sidekick, like her version of Short Round. And this kid is like, so this kid is playing on these instruments. This like a pilot is walking him through a simulation, but it's just this raw simulation with like pulleys and rubber bands. And that teaches him how to fly a plane. And then he doesn't know how to swim in the middle of the movie. But then he ends up swimming just by like repeating instructions that somebody gave him. They make these really odd like leaps. That giant guy, the big bulky dude that's the villain. I'm like, dude, this guy's the most like boring giant guy. This is just,
I got concerned.
So over it.
I got concerned for Harrison Ford for a second. There's a moment in the film, I don't remember exactly where it's at, but he grabs Harrison Ford. He's setting him down, but he's doing it gently.
Yeah.
But he grabs like both of his arms. I'm like, dude, he's got old brittle bones. Like, don't break them.
The guy's got osteo. What is it?
Osteoporosis, I think. Yeah.
Porosis. There we go. Yeah. No, and this guy was just so big where I'm like, this is so over the top. Like, of course,
it's so ridiculous.
Disney would like, this is like a cartoon now. And like, man, those bad guys, the villains are just, there's no layers to them. There's nothing to me that was very interesting about them. Like I said, I just think Mads like didn't really find that extra level. I really wanted him to like kind of show his psycho. So they found a way to make Nazis like boring to me.
Yeah,
to where
we were
I'm not
talking
even
about
like,
that when I was watching it earlier. I was like,
I'm like, I'm not even invested. Like I'm not even like really afraid of these guys. The one guy wants to shoot everyone, so I guess he's kind of scary.
Yeah, he's trigger happy. Yeah.
Yeah, but everyone else, like Mads, is like, I'm gonna point my gun at you. You better give me that thing, or this.
In the traditional Nazi way you see in all those movies that take place during World War II. Follow me, sir.
Do you want her to die, Dr. Jones? Yeah.
It's taken me a long time to find this place. Brandon says, I would take Willie over Helena. Ooh, where do you stand on that? Who would you rather have on the adventure with you?
I don't know. It's so different, right? Because like Willie is supposed to be a love interest. So I think like we're supposed to see her as eye candy. She's decent looking enough, but I think the character is just so vapid and doesn't do anything for the story. I think Helena at least, propels the story, moves things along. And yeah, I mean, I guess I was expecting it to be like totally over the top, kind of like just fit into the whole Captain Marvel category of like being insultingly on the nose about the message. And I felt like with her character, it just wasn't as obnoxious as I thought it would be. And there were moments where I was like, oh, I totally buy this. Like, it didn't seem like, I mean, at some point, like they have to acknowledge the fact that he is like 80. So I can totally see that maybe it seems like they harp on that, but it's like, well, he is. Like, it would be one thing if he was just 60 and they were like, oh, you're decrepit, but in this movie, it's like, I get it. Like the guy can hardly, like, he's literally asking you to leave him to die at the end of the movie. He's just like, just leave me to die, kid.
I do like the story. I do like the storyline she has with her dad, who's played by Toby Jones, who's great. Like, I think his character is interesting. I think her storyline with him. I like his history with Indy there. That stuff's good, but again, not in the movie very much. So
no, not at all.
Well, damn.
And I thought they would tie her to one of the characters from the original trilogy, that she could have been like Marcus's child. And maybe you just, if you're going to deep fake a young Indy, you could just deep fake a young Marcus or something like that. Right. And I mean, man, even going back to that opening scene. So
yes, I was going to ask you how you felt on the opening.
I mean, it's just sort of like the whole deep fake. It's so, to me, the CG is so awkward. The longer they lean on that, when his body moves and his head seems to move like a millisecond behind, it goes to that uncanny valley, sort of seems unnecessary in a regard. And then like when they're on top of the train, it's like standing on a train is an easy thing to do. They're just like casually standing on a train after the fight.
Run across this,
and I'm just like, this is wild. And then when Indy jumps over that line or the pole and it ends up knocking Mads off, and then he comes back and he looks totally fine.
He's fine. No scars, nothing.
See, and I thought it was going to be some time loop thing with his character.
Yeah.
Where he's already found the dial in it. Yeah.
Yes.
And so it's so he knows what happened to himself in the 30s and that he did die. And he's trying to, like, another version of himself found the dial, found a way to 1969. Blah, blah, blah. Some sort of, I don't know. Like, I know that the way I'm describing it doesn't make perfect sense right now.
It sounds better than what we got.
A scar. Like, he looks like, I'm like, why doesn't the villain look menacing? Like,
I was half expecting him to pull like the Red Skull thing where he just pulls his face off. But no, that didn't even happen.
Yeah, I feel like such a missed opportunity here with the dial, that they just they could have used it. If you're gonna have them time travel at some point anyway,
if you're gonna DH Harrison Ford, like, I get it probably was expensive to do for that opening sequence there, but with the title like Dial of Destiny and this whole MacGuffin, I expected a little bit more time travel. I honestly did.
Yeah. and Mads pretty much looks the same throughout the entire movie. I think his hair's a little bit grayer, but it's supposed to be like 30 years later. It's
he changes clothes every once in a while.
Yeah, he wears glasses at the end, so it's
And Thomas, thanks so much for the super chat, man. What is better for you guys, Crystal Skull or Dial? Favorite Indiana Jones villain for me is Irina. I think that's Crystal Skull right there. So, but what's better for you? I think I know your answer, but let's hear.
Yeah, man, I think Crystal Skull is better because it feels more like Indiana Jones. I think James Mangold did a great job directing Dial of Destiny, but he can't save the story or the editing. And I think the Crystal Skull for me just feels more like the original three. Yeah.
Yeah. Like you said, Crystal Skull at least still feels like an Indiana Jones movie. It's not a great movie, but again, there's more things that I enjoyed and was entertained by more so than Dial of Destiny. So for me,
Mhm.
I can't believe I'm saying, if you would have asked me a week ago, I was like, it can't be as bad as Crystal Skull. I'm going Crystal Skull is the better movie.
Yeah.
So what's going on,
Oh
Blue?
yeah, thank you for the super chat.
Yeah,
Antonis.
let me give you a
Appreciate it,
clip
man.
here real quick, actually. Let me give you a good one. Let's
The
see.
denial of decency. I see that in the chat.
All right,
That's
here
hilarious,
you
Travis.
go, Anton.
Guys and girls and guys, gather round and feast your eyes. I promise you all, you just can't lose when you've got your own supply of Ivan's ooze.
What are we supposed to do with it?
Show it to your parents. Show it to your friends. When you've got your ooze, the fun never ends.
This is kind of gross.
You may have heard the phrase that looks can be deceiving. I'm sure that when you've tried it, you all will be believing. And did I mention it's free?
I'll take some.
There you go. All right, there you are. Enough for everybody. Take it home in boxes. Take it home in cases. If your parents try to stop you, just throw it in their faces.
Yeah, Mighty Morphin Power. I had that clip for our Fight Club episode, and it was still on here, so I was like, I'll play that one. Ivan Ooze feels more like an indie character than some of the ones in this one. I agree. And again, that's also Paul Freeman, who played Belloc in Raiders of the Lost Ark right there. So there is an Indiana Jones connection here. But, Dial of Destiny, again, I liked the opening scene, but yeah, the de-aging really took me out of it. But I like the Toby Jones stuff there. I think it's a fun little, like it is exposition and it is setting up the whole story and the whole Dial of Destiny. But I think it's a good opener. It's a good way to start the movie, and the movie just kind of goes downhill from there. One more thing I wanted to ask you about, because we were in the 30s, and then in Crystal Skull we were in the 50s. Now we're in 1969. We're about to go into the 70s. How did you feel about the time period in this movie?
I thought for the most part it worked for me. Although, I mean, as far as like the clothing and Indy's apartment and all that stuff, like all that looked good. The fashion, I would say, like, there's that chase scene during the parade, for like the movie ending where stuff looks like pretty, just obviously like CGI, and like, those actors weren't in the same spots, like, working together. But I do feel like the subways looked real and all that stuff. It was kind of interesting to see Indy on like an old school subway, just like a kind of you've never seen before in Indiana Jones movie. So I thought that worked pretty well. I mean, I like seeing him throughout the different eras for sure. And maybe they could have done, like, I sort of even feel like maybe the Nazi thing is a little tired in the series at this point, and it they could have gone a different route with the villain, like, Vietnam's going on. You could have like the Viet Cong or like the Bat. They're looking for the dial,
which would have made it even more personal due to how his son passed away.
Sure, exactly. Like make it relevant, because like I don't think Nazis were that big in 1969. I mean, I would imagine they were all in hiding at that point. And I think it's a little like, it's one of those things where when you have just the first three movies, of course they're in two of the movies, but also like the layers of villainy in the first three movies are a bit more complex. So it's not like the only villain that he's known for fighting. It's not like a Captain America kind of situation where that's like the main villain of that character, but they've certainly turned it into that, with the whole body of work now being the 5 films. So I thought, like, maybe you can just be a little more creative there, but I'm not going to defend Nazis. I just think maybe not being in the movie would work.
Yeah, no, part of me does feel like it is a little tired at this point, but at the same time, it is a staple for Indiana Jones. Again, outside of Temple of Doom was like the only one that Nazis weren't involved. So I honestly don't know how I would feel about it until I see it in action.
Sure.
It depends on the execution. I could be one way or the other on it. So Antanas wants to know, favorite Indiana Jones villain?
Oh my gosh, there's so many. I think I'm gonna say, I can't remember his name, which is hilarious because it's my favorite movie in the series, but the guy that hires him to find the Holy Grail and then turns on him. I think that guy might be my favorite, because Mac is in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, right? Is that Mac?
Right. I think
so. I can't. You guys, let me know in the chat. Hop into IMDb. Let me know in the chat, because I like him as a villain, because in a Bondish kind of way, he hires Indy to find this thing, doesn't tell him what his true motive is, and then Walter Donovan, there you go, Antonis, and you don't find out that he's with the Nazis until like the worst possible moment for Indy to find that. And he's basically like, I don't care, like I'm not even really on their side. I just think that they're able to put me in a position where I can get this thing. And I love seeing him get his comeuppance. He is just entirely too cocky and sure of himself, and he pays the ultimate price. So love seeing that. One of the scenes that stuck with me as a kid, that whole talk about the melting scene from Raiders, but man, that scene really scared me. That and Large Marge from Pee-wee freaked the hell out of me.
Oh my God, yeah. Raymond says my favorite villain is the Heart Stealer from Temple, and then Ram. It's a great one. It is again terrifying for a child. It definitely helped create the PG-13 rating. But for me, again, I always go back to Belloc because his personality is what does it for me. Like he's very fun, he's very playful, but he's a bad guy at the same time. It's a nice little dynamic there. So for me, he's sort of just like in the middle too, where he's just like, well, I don't care how this shakes out. Like I'm making money, and that's really all I care about. And these guys are providing me with the means to make money. I respect that. And they're my bodyguards essentially. I don't have to worry about somebody trying to hurt me because I'm like in a camp with a bunch of soldiers, So and a charming like opposite side of the coin to Indy, where it's like they are, they both search for these artifacts. They both have totally different ways of looking at that search and what they're after ultimately. Absolutely. Okay, a couple last comments and then we'll get ready to wrap things up here. Brandon says Harrison did say the character of Indy dies when he passes away. He did say that. But do you think the studios will feel the same way? That is an interesting question. Yeah, I don't know. I think that with enough time and space between that event, I would not be surprised if they brought the character back and just recast it. But I know that people feel a little bit differently about that kind of stuff now. So who knows? It's tough. I feel two different ways about this. As a fan, I'd be like, no, let's quit now. Like we had a good run. We had 3 great movies and 2 not so great movies. Let's just let's end it. Harrison Ford's not getting any younger. But at the same time, this is a very iconic character in pop culture in general. Very iconic franchise. Indiana Jones will be back. Whether that's a TV series, whether that's I think they should reboot it. I don't think they should continue this current storyline at all. I think if you're gonna do another Indiana Jones movie, you gotta start completely over from scratch. And you can't do Nazis now. I mean, I guess you could, but you would have to think of something a little bit more updated, more current, because current audiences aren't gonna care about Nazis anymore. So so a full reboot where it's Indiana Jones. I feel like that's the safest way to go about it. Yeah, people are gonna be mad, but that's better than continuing on this story without Harrison Ford. Again, he's too popular. I don't think he's gonna go away forever. I do think this is the last time Harrison Ford will play in Indiana Jones. For sure. So Blu-ray says I can see them trying to make a Disney Plus TV series. You know what? I could actually see that because remember they did that National Treasure show. I didn't watch it. I heard it flopped hard, but they did have, again, that was another like Disney adventure thing. So I could definitely see that going to Disney Plus. I think that's a safe option. If people watch it and like it, great. If not, it's not gonna do any good, really. Well, and I mean, National Treasure is basically a reboot of Indiana Jones. It plays out very similar. Especially I haven't seen I don't think I've seen. Oh no, I have seen the second movie. But the first movie like plays out like very much like Last Crusade-ish. There's that animosity between the father and the son and all that kind of stuff. It's sort of flip-flopped in that one, but it's a similar kind of vibe, and a little more modern as far as having like the quippy team that always saying funny stuff back and forth to each other. So yeah, it's kind of like a reboot. It's so tough. Like there's money to be made, so they're going to try it again. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Kathleen Kennedy, she seems to want to do like the antithesis of what made these properties popular. Regardless of whether or not it's successful or not, they just keep on pushing that way. They'll just keep on losing money and they'll die on that hill. And that's certainly their prerogative. But I think you can still include all sorts of different types of people in these stories.
You can have representation if that's what you're after. You can tackle complex issues, but you're going to have to be like much more creative and smart and subtle about the writing. You're going to have to really put time and energy into it and not just hit people over the face with your message, because we've seen time and time again that the audiences don't care about that.
No.
We're just told by critics that we should care about it. And then we're blamed when the movies don't make billions of dollars, because it's suddenly our fault that we just are a bit more protective about what we let in as far as art goes. So yeah, who knows what the hell Disney's going to do. It would probably be, the way that Crow fans feel about a reboot of The Crow. People would probably feel that way about somebody else taking over Indiana Jones.
It's sacred to a lot of people, for sure.
Yeah.
So speaking of TV shows, someone did bring it up in the chat. I was going to mention this very briefly because I don't know if you've seen it, but there was a young Indiana Jones TV series starring Sean Patrick Flannery. Do you know this? Did you watch
I remember
it
when it came out. I don't know if I might have seen like one episode when it first ran, but back in that day, it's like if you missed a show, like that was it. Like
there was no like DVR, there was no streaming.
Couldn't go back and watch it.
Right.
I don't think it lasted very long, so I don't remember. What is it? A season or two, maybe something like that.
Yeah. Well, Sean Patrick Flannery from Boondock Saints, who I love, by the way.
He's a great actor.
I think he's a fun actor. I enjoy him, but so again, they'll probably do a limited series like this or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
But Robert the Wolfman, what's going on, man? Who would you like to see? Who would you like to see play Indy if they do reboot it?
I don't know.
Chris Pratt.
I would. Yeah. Well, I think he would have been. So if he were never in the Jurassic Park franchise and we go back 10 years, like I think he could have done it, something like that. Or
I know there was talk of Bradley Cooper, and I do think Bradley Cooper would be a really good choice. But
he's getting a little older.
He is getting up there, yeah.
I see that all the time with fan castings where people are like, "Oh, this person would be great," and I'm like, "Well, you're thinking about them in like 2003 or 1995. Like
right.
Kevin Bacon can't play Freddy Krueger. People, he's like almost.
Nor
as
do
old
I
as
want him.
Robert
I love
Englund.
Kevin Bacon, but yeah,
the difference between Robert Englund and Kevin Bacon is like maybe 6 or 7 years. And then like even a guy like Bradley Cooper, like I'm not saying he's old, but like we're thinking about somebody playing the character for 15 to 20 years. And
I was going to say you're going to want to at least sign a 3-picture deal at most.
So
right?
yeah. And hopefully, I always say this too. It's probably an actor that I haven't even heard of at this point yet, because I like seeing relatively unknown actors that have shown they've got chops take on these iconic roles, because it helps me. That suspension of disbelief is so important to me as an audience member. So I really want that when I go in. Again, going back to A Nightmare on Elm Street, Robert Englund wasn't a big name when he got that role. He became a name because of that role. And it's one of the reasons why I think that works, So I think it's probably some actor I've never heard of. It's probably somebody that's like 18 years old now. And in 10 to 15 years, they'd be the perfect age to take over Indy.
Yeah, it's a good answer.
Or it's Bill Skarsgård, because F it, he's in everything.
Bill Skarsgård, which I love Bill Skarsgård, but again, it's that oversaturation. It's like, okay, we get it, you're good, you don't need to be in everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I don't really have a name off the top of my head, but I do agree with you. Like if I'm watching something and I notice like a new actor that I haven't seen before and that character stands out, I'm going to remember that. For example, Jenna Ortega, I know she's been in stuff before this, but the first time where I can really like remember one of her characters sticking with me was 2020's The Babysitter Killer Queen, the sequel to The Babysitter on Netflix. She's in that. She did a great job. And then after that, she did stuff like Scream and all that stuff like that. So if it's a relatively unknown actor and they do something that'll catch me, I'm going to remember that more than somebody like Chris Pratt, who I've seen 100 times before. Hugh Jackman. Hugh Jackman. I love Hugh Jackman. Way too old.
They'll probably pick that guy that what's his name, Glenn something. He was in the new Top Gun.
Glenn
Maverick.
Powell, yeah, that guy's popping up in everything now.
He's in that Twisters Legacy sequel, but he's got a look very close to Harrison Ford. Like, I'm not saying
Yeah.
they look exactly alike, but he's got that kind of classic, that rugged, handsome kind of classic. Especially if he bulked up a bit, you know, you put some sweat and dirt on him, because he kind of has a little bit of a pretty boy vibe going.
Oh yeah.
But I think you can work with that, because I think you could look at Harrison Ford back in the day and you know, given the right role, he's a relatively pretty guy, you know. So it's like you have to think of him in the scope of playing Indiana. Like, he's going to be dirty. He's going to be, you know, I think maybe he's got that. Maybe in 10 years he could take something like that on. Who knows?
Yeah. All right. Well, that was really all I had. Did you have anything else that you wanted to add about any of these movies?
I do want to say one thing, because my brother reminded me
yeah.
of it earlier. Because my brother Matt, who is in the chat, he does 3D matte painting, and he's worked on, man, all sorts of stuff. Like Shutter Island was his like big break, and he had worked on a couple movies before that. But he worked on Avatar. He worked on the first Avengers movie. He worked on like Game of Thrones. He was one of the lead matte painters for Game of Thrones. So like whole bunch of work. And he was like, you guys gotta mention, we named the dog Indiana. He was like, you guys gotta talk about, he's like, it's one of the most famous matte painting shots in like all of movie history, and it's the last shot of Raiders of the Lost Ark, which starts out is you know, the warehouse, but as they go back, so the matte painter, he like made there's like little models of the pallets and the things on the pallet. So some of that's practical, and then he painted like the back part of it. But it is a gorgeous, like, as the camera moves out, you know, practical matte paintings are really cool, because they seem like they really do seem like something that's really there when they're lit the right way and it matches up. And that's one of those classic shots where you'd think that really was shot in this giant warehouse.
Right. Yeah.
But now when you see it on a 75-inch TV, you're like, okay, I can kind of tell. But hey, when we were watching this stuff on VHS, it's like perfect.
Oh,
you know? So just wanted to bring that up as my tribute to my matte painting brother, Matt.
Awesome. Hell yeah. All right, so Davey Deathray, you're doing a lot over there on your channel. What can you talk about that you got coming up?
So we got some really fun stuff coming up over at the channel. Really easy to find me. You just look up Davey Deathray. You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, Letterboxd, all that kind of fun stuff, and of course here on YouTube. I do pre-recorded reviews, and I do some reactions and stuff like that. I've been getting into franchise rankings, so I just did Friday the 13th and then followed up with a Nightmare on Elm Street. That was really fun. And doing collaborations like this video with Chris here. I did a top 10 zombie movies of all time with Barry from Wolfman's Got Nards. That was a blast. So looking to do more collaborations, and to kind of tie into that, I'm starting a late night, basically a late night talk show called
Love that.
Night with the Davey.
I love the title too.
Yeah, it's I really enjoyed Late Night with the Devil, and I was like, oh my gosh, like that's just it falls right into place.
It was
perfect
timing. Yeah.
Yeah, and there wasn't really, I'm like, man, in our community here, that like horror leaning, but also like nostalgia and just sort of like, you know, covering film and, you know, all that kind of stuff. I'm like, I don't really see a smack dab middle of the week late night show. So I'm like, well, there's a void there. I'll fill it up. It'll be 10 p.m. Eastern every Wednesday. And the idea is to kind of do like a talk show, like bring creative people on, whether they're content creators here on YouTube or, you know, authors, independent store owners, musicians. Couple guests we've got coming up is Cody, aka the Dude from Dude Who Loves Movies, is going to be on the show this coming week. Matt Facci is going to be on the show. Then we've got Nightmare Christie, who owns Nightmare Toys out in Las Vegas. She's going to be on the second episode. My buddy Anthony Brownlee, who's was part of the Fredheads documentary and is an author himself. So just trying to elevate. I always talk about it on the channel, you know, elevating the audience or lifting up the audience and lifting up the other content creators, just to, you know, build a sense of community here. So that's Late Night with the Davey every Wednesday at 10 p.m. Eastern. And then Kate and I are coming back with another episode of Movie Date with Davey and Kate this Saturday, which is mine and Chris's birthday.
Yes.
And we're going to be covering Scream 2. So that will be live, and it's a discussion. So it's not a watch along. We just talk about the film, our memories. The idea of the show is that we both really know the movie well. So we have that open discussion and invite you guys to join us as well.
And guys, it truly is a great show. I'm not just saying that because he's here. Like, I've tuned into as many live streams as I could with you guys, and every time you guys are doing a movie date with Davey and Kate, I was like, let's see what they're talking about. So you guys are killing it over there.
Thank you. It's like, I just think of it as like hanging out with friends. And and my wife is like so much more better looking than I am. So that's a bonus that people can tune in and see somebody a bit prettier than me. So and it's fun too, because we're about like 11 years apart in age, right? So it's kind of cool, like certain movies that maybe they're from my childhood, but she grew up watching them, So we're going to cover Beetlejuice here in August before the new movie comes out, because that's one of her favorites of all time. So it'll be cool to talk about like our different experiences growing up with the film, and just all that. I feel like having that discussion and just sort of learning why we like things, why we don't like things, and learning the differences as well as the commonalities. To me, it just fascinates me. So pop up in the chat, let us know why we're right or why we're wrong, and you're welcome no matter what the opinion is.
All right. As for me, I'm not doing much. Next weekend, May 17th, we're going to have Cody from Dude Who Loves Movies on. We got Garrett from Born to Be Rad coming on, and Justin from the Rad Pack, and Justin David Talks. He's coming out. We're all going to watch the Goonies together for my birthday special the day before. But yes, it is your birthday the same day as me on May 18th. We share the same birthday. What was it? 10 years apart, I think.
10 years apart to the day. It's wild, man.
So while you're here, I might as well give you this little clip, my friend.
Happy birthday! Woo! I hope you're hungry. You should see that toast. I couldn't even get it through the door.
I love Uncle Buck, man.
Oh man, if I could have one birthday wish, it would bring John Candy back. I miss it. Man, Who's Harry Crumb, Uncle Buck, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
Great Outdoors is a great one.
So many more. Yeah. Even Home Alone, his cameo in Home Alone is great. Hilarious. Yeah,
very big in Sheboygan. Yeah. Polka. We sold about 323 copies of that.
Yeah. I see Brandon the Bedlam. Beldam. Sorry, he wants to know if I'll be the next Chris Stuckman here.
That one.
Oh, but he wants to have you on the channel. Yeah. I don't know. You mean, will I be afraid to say that I don't like a movie? No, I will not.
Shots fired.
Well, here's the thing: is I really love Stuckman for a really long time.
I respect the guy immensely. Yeah.
Yeah. He put out his Halloween 2018 review, and it's not that his opinion rubbed me the wrong way, but he straight up mischaracterized multiple scenes in the film to justify like the negative stuff he was saying about it. So I thought that was like really unfair. That's not what a reviewer should do. You shouldn't you basically are saying that something happened when it didn't happen that way. That's not cool. And then especially to now that he's a filmmaker, if you don't want to, now you're basically telling us if you're not going to review a movie that you think is bad. So any movie that you don't review, I'm going to assume you think it's shit.
Right.
So
you're no, I actually didn't see that one. Well, I don't know that. You didn't say that.
And I think the way to do it, honestly, he did that whole video of I'm not going to review Madam Web because this is about celebrating film. And it's like, dude, Chris, this is what you need to do. You need to go out to your audience. And granted, he's got his own channel. He's like one of the biggest YouTubers of all time. Yeah. But you just straight up tell your audience, hey guys, now that I'm making film, I see things in a totally different way. It's a completely different perspective. And instead of critiquing films, now that I'm in the more of the creative sphere, what I'm going to turn the channel into is we're just going to talk topics about films. Please let me know the topics you want to discuss. We're going to still keep up the content here and do videos and cover movies, but I'm not going to be reviewing anything just because I've entered a totally different chapter of my life. So we're going to be shifting the focus of the channel. Thank you so much for your support. I hope you check out Shelby Oaks when it comes out. Done. That's all you do. You don't plug it. I'm going to review movies, but I'm not going to review movies I don't like. Don't pussyfoot it, dude. Just be a man. Buck up. Because I kind of don't want to watch his movie.
Yeah, I quit
By the way.
watching Stuckman a
So-
long time ago, says Ashton. I did too.
Yeah.
Like when I started back in 2007 when I started this whole YouTube thing. And you had like Wet Movie One and Cool Dude or Jeremy Johns, Chris Stuckman, like those were the guys. And I'd watched them for years. I've taken a lot of inspiration from each of them. And but there was a point I can't even really pinpoint when it was, but at some point I just kind of like I grew out of the Chris Stuckman thing.
Yeah,
I was just like
I straight up unsubbed after that
Yeah,
review. I was like, dude, that's not cool. I'm out.
Proud of him for doing his own movie. It takes a lot
Yeah.
of work, a lot of effort. It's very stressful to make a movie. So kudos to him. He has my utmost respect for that. And look, you can run your channel however you want to run it. I'm not gonna
Absolutely.
tell you how to
That's the cardinal rule of
But
YouTubing is you tell
just
somebody else
be
how to run it.
prepared for a lot of backlash if you treat your audience a certain way. That's all I'm saying.
Sure, yeah. And Brandon, if what you're getting at is like, am I going to try to be a filmmaker at some point? Like, I'm working on some fan films as a producer. I certainly, if the opportunity arose to become more and more involved in the filmmaking community and to take on some of those roles and wherever that would lead, like I would love to do that kind of stuff. I'd at the very least would love to just be a part of that process. So I love film because it takes thousands of people sometimes to make a movie. I love how it represents teamwork, camaraderie, knowing your role, sacrifice, people understanding and communicating. Like I love that aspect of it. So if that's what you meant about Chris Stuckman, then yes, absolutely.
And look,
hopefully I'll get millions of subs.
While we're on the subject, that crowdfunding that he had raised is nothing to sneeze at.
Oh yeah.
Because that shows you how big his audience is right there.
Yeah.
So
no, he's an absolute success. Anything that I can say in my opinion on him doesn't really matter. It's just one guy's opinion that doesn't even have 700 subs. So who the hell am I to talk?
But as for me, I just got the one live stream next weekend. Then after that, I'll be taking some time, not really away, just I'll be taking some time working on other projects. I'll be working kind of like my own movie in a way. I'm working on 2 really big deep dive projects. One's for Scream, Who Killed Who. The other one I can't talk about until August, but I'm very excited about both of them. I'll be working on those a lot. I'll do the occasional live stream here and there. You probably won't see much pre-recorded videos in that time because I'll be busy putting all my focus there, but I'll do a live stream occasionally. I'll still be active in the live chats. I'll still be posting in the community tab. I'm not going away. I'm just moving on to something else for a little bit. And then I'm going to come back, and we're going to come back full force. So, so thanks, Davey, for coming on, talking Indiana Jones. Like I said, it's been a while since I actually sat and watched through all of these, so this was fun.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, it had been a really long time, and these were, my parents, like I said, had the VHS when I was a kid, the trilogy, and then when it came out on DVD, they got those. So, like, this has been such a staple throughout my life. But yeah, it's probably been, I wouldn't be surprised, 15 years since I've seen Last Crusade, 15 to 20 maybe. So it was awesome to revisit and see that they still had the magic, well, the first 3.
Say I'm not watching the other 2 again. Brandon says, I've been wanting to do a Spider-Man series watch along on my channel. That would be awesome. And speaking of Spider-Man, you know that Sony is re-releasing all the live-action Spider-Man movies in theaters right now every Monday. Have you gone to any of them? Do you have any interest in going to any of them in particular?
Man, I haven't, but your videos made me, I was like, man, I wish I just had, I'd have to drive probably 45 minutes to an hour away to go to a theater that would be showing it. And it's just sort of like trying to keep up on all of this and just balancing everything in my life. But man, Spider-Man 2, like Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2 is one of my favorite superhero movies of all time. Like it's really tough to get better than that. And Alfred Molina's performance is great. I love a good tragic villain that you sort of have, you feel bad for. I like that. And I feel like that's the movie where Raimi really got to show off like a little bit more of his like Evil Dead style, kind of bring that creative
that whole
camera
scene
work
when he's
more.
waking up in the hospispral and the arms wake up before him. And,
the
Evil
puppetry.
Dead. Dude, there's even a chainsaw for crying out loud.
There's like the woman that's like cowering and the wind's
and the
blowing all
scratching
around.
and she's
You know,
getting
it's just
dragged
very-
away. Oh, it's a
Yeah,
horror movie
yeah.
at that point.
It's great. Yeah, it's awesome. So
but-
that would be the one that I would go check out. But
It was
yeah.
a blast. That was the only one I did go to. I wanted to
Yeah.
go to Amazing Spider-Man 2 tomorrow, but I don't think I'm gonna make it. Just because I'm a huge defender of Amazing Spider-Man 2. I love that movie.
Yeah. I remember when you talked about that on your channel. Yeah, I think that I really love Andrew Garfield as
I do
Spider-Man.
too.
I think that movie was just a bit too oversaturated. But
it is.
But yeah, I mean, he does. To me, he feels so much like Peter. Like the awkwardness is great.
Yeah.
I love how slender he is. He really looks like comic book like accurate. You know, because he's got kind of a unique body type. You know, he's a very slender guy. So fits the character and all that. So it's a shame that we didn't get like a true third movie, you know, just with him. Loved seeing him come back in what was it, No Way Home? Is that what they called that one?
Mm-hmm.
They all have home in the title. So
I don't feel the need to go in and revisit all the Tom Holland movies in theaters. I just don't have that urge because they're still new, and I did go see them all in theaters already. So it's not like the Sam Raimi trilogy where the last time they were in theaters, I was a kid. Now I'm an adult. That's a different experience. So I definitely wanted to go to one of the Raimi ones, and Spider-Man 2 was the one I did. So.
And those are just a bit more stylized. I feel like a lot of the Marvel stuff, there's nothing wrong with the Marvel movies, but I feel like there's just not much style outside of some of the first wave. Yeah, the first wave has like, you know, obviously Iron Man doesn't look the same way as like the Captain America movie. Like you have two good directors making those. But as they moved on, it just sort of kind of started to blend, and all the movies sort of like looked, even that second Doctor Strange movie. So you bring Raimi back, and he only gets, there's only a couple moments in that movie where you can tell that Sam Raimi is the director, which is a shame. To me, it's like, if you hire Sam Raimi, like you need to like let him do what he wants to do, because he is one of the most stylized or, you know, stylistic directors out there. So, you know, don't put him in handcuffs.
I'm biased because I'm a Doctor Strange fanatic. I enjoyed Multiverse of Madness a lot, but I will acknowledge that it feels like Disney and Sam Raimi were playing a little bit of tug of war behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Like Sam Raimi wanted to do his thing. Disney wanted to make sure, like, hey, don't forget it's the MCU, and it feels very much like a back and forth type thing throughout the whole movie.
They're basically like, so Sam, here, we looked over your list of demands. We can't do the thing where the camera does this like at characters, and we're not going to do that. We will let you have Bruce Campbell be in the movie. We'll do that, and then at the end of the movie, we'll let Doctor Strange look like a Deadite for like 5 minutes. So you can have those two things, but everything else has to go our way. And Sam's like, okay, whatever.
Speaking of Marvel, I just thought of the clip from Infinity War with Chris Pratt, where he's looking at Iron Man. He's like, that's a really good plan, except it sucks. So let me do the plan. And then, like, that's exactly the conversation that Kevin Feige had with Sam Raimi.
They're like, Sam, we already fired the last director. Don't make us fire you. All right, bud.
All right, guys, we're gonna get on out of here. Davey, thanks again for joining me. Thanks again for suggesting this idea. This was a lot of fun to go back and rewatch and talk about. Minus those two movies, which I will forgive you for. But this was fun, and we definitely gotta get together again at some point for sure.
Yeah, man. Hey, and you know, while you're working on your projects and stuff, maybe we can find a way to bring you into
I'll have
late
more
night
free
with
time.
Davey. And you know, and just we want to make sure that people still know you're out there. We can kind of check in on those projects you're doing, and people gotta get their Chris Snyder on. Gotta get that movie Misfits fix.
The Deathray of Misfits.
Absolutely.
Again, that sounds very sci-fi. That belongs in Crystal Skull with the aliens.
And let us know in the chat, which franchise do you want to see us tackle next?
We will do another one of these if you guys want. Yeah, if you guys want another one for franchise retrospective, we'll do it.
Might be a couple months down the road or November, but we'll find some time.
Yeah, we were already talking about a November idea.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I think we've got a December. Yeah, we got some stuff in the works.
Yeah, for
plenty
sure.
of.
But we'll definitely love to hear your guys' suggestions as well. I definitely gotta go. All right, guys. Thanks so much for hanging out. Davey, any final words?
Well, all I got to say is if you're not familiar with this franchise, it is so well worth going back, especially to check out those first three movies. They are a lot of fun. And I think you can kind of watch them in whatever order you want. That's the great thing about how it all goes. So I recommend starting with The Last Crusade. That's my personal favorite. I think that'll hook you in to the character, and I think it'll give you a good appreciation going back to the previous two films.
Brandon and Ashton both say Terminator.
Yeah, Terminator's great. We should
I
do
think
that.
Terminator's a good one.
Yeah, there it is.
Again, the last 2 or 3 of those, I'm just like, ugh.
Yeah, I'm like Genesis. I think Genesis might be the best one.
I do like Genesis. I'm not gonna lie, but like Dark Fate, I haven't even watched. I wasn't a fan of Rise of the Machines, and it's just that franchise is a mess.
Dark Fate makes The Last Jedi look like a masterpiece.
Oh God, that's what I've heard. I saw the opening scene involving CG Edward Furlong. That's all I'm gonna say, and I was like, that's enough for me. I'm out.
All right, so Brandon and Ashton have decided. It is decided.
It is decided. All right, guys. Well, we'll see you guys later. Thanks so much for hanging out. Go subscribe to David's channel. Check out all his content he's got over there. We will definitely do this again, my friend. And happy birthday next week, my friend.
Happy early birthday. Yeah, we'll have to hop on a quick call that day.
We'll have to. Yeah. Yep. All right.
All right.
Well, guys,
Thank you so
see
much,
you later.
Chris. Appreciate you.
Until next time, be excellent to each other and party on.